At 6:47 a.m., the two-lane stretch of Route 41 was mostly empty. A low-gray sky pressed over the fields, and the pavement still glistened from the night's drizzle. Jack Mercer's old pickup hummed along at 50, the engine a familiar, steady rumble. Country music played low on the radio, all steel guitar and heartbreak. In the back seat, Eli had his knees pulled up, a sketchbook balanced against them. The boy's pencil moved in quick, careful strokes, scratching softly under the music. Every few seconds he glanced out the window, studying the way the bare trees cut into the sky, then checked his drawing again. "You okay back there, bud?" Jack asked without looking in the rear view. "Fine," Eli murmured, not lifting his head. His voice had that distracted softness he got when he was somewhere between the real world and the one on the page. Jack allowed himself a small smile. "Make me handsome this time." "You're too late," Eli said. "It's already on the paper." Up ahead, a silver Mercedes slid into view, coming toward them, in the opposite lane, headlights flicking pale in the dim morning. For a moment, it was just another car on another morning. Inside that car, Charlotte Hale's hands tightened on the wheel. Her phone lit up for the fourth time in 10 minutes, vibrating across the console. She did not look at the caller ID. She already knew the names: her father, the board chair, her lawyer. They had all taken turns. She stabbed at the screen, silencing it, then exhaled through her teeth. The highway curved gently. A patch of fog hugged a ditch. Her eyes burned from too much crying and not enough sleep. A deer bolted from the tree line. It came from her right in a blur of brown and white. Charlotte's breath caught. She jerked the wheel. The tires lost grip on the wet asphalt. The Mercedes spun the world, snapping into a smear of Sky Road branches sky again. There was a violent jolt, the crunch and scream of metal hitting wood, the sharp pop of glass. In the pickup, Jack slammed his foot on the brake. The coffee in the cup holder sloshed up and over. Eli's pencil jumped from the page. "Wow," Eli gasped. "Et bon fils ton spurred." Jack's heart kicked hard against his ribs. The Mercedes had disappeared down into the shallow ditch, nose buried in the trunk of a maple, the back end twisted toward the road. Steam billowed from under its hood. "Grab my phone," Jack said. His voice was already clipped-focused. "Call 911. Tell them there's been a crash on Route 41 mile, marker 18. Can you see the marker?" Eli scrambled for the phone, fingers slipping. "I see it. 18. Okay. Jack had already thrown the truck into park. The cold air hit his face as he stepped out. It smelled like wet earth and hot metal. A faint burning scent lingered, sharp and wrong. He slid down the grassy incline, boots skidding. Up close, he could see the impact had crumpled the front of the car inward. The windshield was spiderwebbed. Inside, a woman slumped against the deployed airbag, hair loose across her face, an ugly gash blooming red at her hairline. "Ma'am," he called, "can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered. A faint sound escaped her, more breath than word. Jack grabbed the driver's side handle. The door refused to move at first. He braced his shoulder against it and shoved metal, groaning, until it finally gave way with a shudder. The airbag deflated under his hands. The woman's perfume, light and expensive, clung strangely to the smell of antifreeze and blood. He slid his arms under her and lifted. She was lighter than he expected, all angles and limp weight. As he carried her up toward the road, her head lolled against his shoulder. A streak of blood soaked into his flannel. Up above, Eli stood beside the pickup phone, to his ear, eyes wide. "Yes, there's a lot of smoke," he said. "My dad pulled her out. He's got her." Jack laid the woman gently on the shoulder of the road, as far from the car as he could. He shrugged off his jacket and folded it under her head. Her lashes trembled. Blue eyes opened for a heartbeat, unfocused. "You're okay," he said more quietly than he felt. "Help's coming." The distant wail of a siren floated through the morning. Eli's small face appeared over Jack's shoulder, pale and solemn. "Is she going to die?" he asked. "Not if they get here fast," Jack answered. He did not add the part he was thinking, that sometimes even fast was not enough. The ambulance arrived in a blur of red lights and purposeful motion. Paramedics swarmed, checking vitals, fitting a neck collar, sliding her onto a backboard. Jack stepped back, suddenly aware of his bare arms in the cold. His jacket disappeared with her into the ambulance. He reached for his phone and realized Eli still held it, fingers tight. "Sir," one of the paramedics called from the open back doors. "You riding along?" Jack shook his head. "I didn't see the whole thing. Just pulled over. You go." The doors swung closed. For a second, through the small glass window, he caught one last glimpse of the woman's face, pale against the white pillow. As the engine revved and the siren wound up, something small slid from the churning tangle of blankets and landed unnoticed on the floor. A wooden pencil worn smooth with use. Eli saw it as the ambulance pulled away, just a flash of familiar yellow-brown near the threshold. He opened his mouth to shout, but the vehicle was already rolling down the road, carried away by the sound of its own urgency. By the time Jack and Eli climbed back into the pickup, the sky had shifted from gray to a weak, washed-out blue. Jack wiped his hands on an old rag more from habit than need. "You did good on the phone," he said as he started the truck. Eli nodded. His eyes stayed on the road ahead, but his fingers curled a little tighter around his sketchbook. Cedar Falls woke slowly around them. The town was small enough that everyone knew who lived behind which mailbox, big enough that a person could still have secrets if they were quiet. Jack turned off the highway and followed the familiar streets toward home, past the white-steepled church, the one-screen movie theater, the diner, with its flickering neon sign that read "Open," even when it was closed. Their house sat at the end of a short gravel driveway, a low-weathered place with peeling paint and a porch that creaked when you crossed it. In the backyard, a tall oak tree stretched bare branches into the sky. A faint heart with initials carved into the bark sat at eye level, softened by time. Inside the kitchen was cramped but tidy. A single mug with a blue S printed on the side sat in the cabinet. Jack pulled it down, stared at it for half a second, then set it back and reached for a plain white one instead. Eli climbed onto a chair at the table, opening his sketchbook again. The drawing from the truck was half finished, a road leading toward a line of dark trees. He began adding a car now tiny in the distance. "You want cereal?" Jack asked. "Sure." Jack poured, then leaned against the counter and watched his son draw. Eli's hand moved with a confidence that did not match his age. The pencil shaded the side of the car, making it look like it was gliding into darkness. "You sleep okay last night?" Jack asked. Eli shrugged. "I had that dream again." "About the hospital?" "About the beeping," Eli said. His pencil paused for a heartbeat, then kept going. Jack's gaze flicked toward the hallway, where a framed photo of a younger Eli sat on a shelf, in a faded hospital gown, a stuffed bear in his lap. Sarah stood behind him, one arm around his shoulders, the other holding up a drawing he had made. Jack was just out of frame, hand visible on the back of the chair. "Dreams can't hurt you," Jack said. He wished he believed that. By mid-morning, he was in the garage behind the house, the Mercer Auto sign squeaking softly in the wind. The smell of oil and rubber hugged the low rafters. An old Ford pickup sat on the lift, its undercarriage rusted bolts stubborn. Jack liked this part, the problem-solving. Engines made sense. They either worked or they did not, and there was always a reason. Eli sat in his usual corner on an upside-down milk crate sketchbook, balanced on his knees. He had traded the small pencil he kept in his pocket for a slightly longer one, the wood-worn smooth where his fingers gripped it. At some point, a school nurse had mentioned a murmur when listening to his heart. It had been during a parent-teacher conference, a quick aside in a crowded hallway. Nothing urgent, she had said, just something to have checked when you can. Jack had nodded, thanked her, folded the note into his wallet. There were always other bills on the counter. The note stayed folded. "Can I draw your hands?" Eli asked now. Jack looked down at his own hands, scarred and nicked, and black in the creases from years of grease that never fully washed out. "You really want those in your book?" "Mom liked them," Eli said simply. Jack held them out, palms up. Eli peered at them, eyes narrowed, pencil ready. A moment later, he looked away and swayed just slightly. It was there and gone, like a flicker of bad light. "You all right?" Jack asked. "Yeah, just sat too fast." Eli bent back over the page lines forming the shapes of fingers' tendons, the thick wristwatch Jack wore. In Chicago, the sky was a cleaner blue, the kind that reflected in glass towers and made the river look almost pretty. On the 34th floor of the Hale Art Group's headquarters, a conference room stretched along one side of the building, all windows and polished stone. Charlotte sat at the head of the long table, back straight, a navy suit jacket folded over the chair behind her. A screen on the far wall displayed a graph that climbed and dipped in color. Names of galleries scrolled past in neat lists. Someone was talking about an acquisition. Her attention was elsewhere. On the glossy surface in front of her, just beside her phone, lay a small wooden pencil. It looked wrong there among the silver pens and expensive notebooks, its paint chipped, the eraser long gone. She turned it slowly between her fingers, feeling the grooves where someone else's grip had worn it down. "Charlotte?" Her father's voice cut through the buzz of the room. He was seated midway down the table, still broad-shouldered in his 70s, gray hair combed back with care. "The board is waiting on your position." She blinked, pulled her gaze from the pencil and focused on the graph. "We pass on Berlin," she said. "Too much exposure in Europe already." The room adjusted around her decision with murmurs and notes. Across from her, Patrick Doyle, the investigator, sat with an unmarked folder in front of him. He caught her eye once, a brief glance that said a conversation was overdue. When the meeting broke, her father drew Patrick into his orbit like gravity. They spoke in low voices near the window. Charlotte stayed where she was, thumb pressed against the dull point of the pencil. Patrick crossed to her at last and set the folder on the table. "I found him," he said. She opened it. Inside were photographs printed on plain paper. One showed a small garage with a hand-painted sign that read, "Mercer Auto." Another showed a man under the hood of a car ball cap, low dark hair curling at the edges, arms braced as he leaned into his work. A boy appeared in one shot, sitting on a crate with a sketchbook. "Jack Mercer," Patrick said. 35. Owns that garage in Cedar Falls, Ohio. Widowed. One son, Eli. No criminal record. No debts beyond a mortgage and the usual small-town stuff. Health insurance, but not the good kind. He spoke in the even tone of someone used to delivering facts that might or might not matter. Behind them, her father's voice rose. "We will send him a check," he said. "That is the decent thing. Then we move on. You cannot fix every mechanic who pulls you out of a ditch, Charlotte." She did not look at him. Her eyes stayed on the photo of Jack, on the strong line of his jaw, the grease on his forearm, the way the boy glanced toward him, even while drawing. "He walked away," she said. "He did not leave a name. He did not ask for anything." "All the more reason to be efficient," her father replied. "Our PR team can wrap it into the Foundation's narrative." In the reflection on the dark window, Charlotte saw herself. Designer blouse, subtle makeup, diamond studs at her ears. The life her father had built and handed to her like a suit that never quite fit. She closed the folder and picked up the pencil instead. That night, the city lights threw shifting patterns across the floor of her penthouse. Her heels lay abandoned near the door, her suit jacket flung over a chair. She sat on the edge of the couch in a faded college t-shirt, bare feet tucked under her, the folder open again on the coffee table. She traced the outline of Jack's face on the photo with her gaze. The camera had caught him mid-movement, mouth slightly open as if speaking to someone just out of frame. The boy in the background hunched over his sketchbook, the world narrowed to the page. Her laptop sat open beside the folder, Cedar Falls glowing in muted colors on the screen. A digital map showed the thin line of Route 41, the small knot of streets that made up the town. Zooming in, she could see the diner, the white church, the little building with Mercer Auto painted on its front. Her phone vibrated again, skittering a little on the glass. Her father's name, then her lawyer's, then the board chair. She let them stack up. When she did finally answer, it was a video call with her father, his face filling the screen framed by the dark wood of his home office. "You disappeared from your own meeting," he said without preamble. "Not physically, but you understand my meaning." "I was there," she said. "Barely. They are already circling around that accident. They want to use it. A survival story, a fresh narrative." Hale Art rises from the wreckage with its visionary leader. His mouth curved in something that was almost a smile. It could be useful. Heat crawled up her neck. It was not a marketing stunt. "I did not say it was." He leaned back. "But we do not waste material." She ended the call without saying goodbye. In the quiet that followed, she walked to her bedroom closet and pulled the doors open. Rows of tailored jackets and crisp blouses lined one side. On the other, dresses waited on padded hangers arranged by color. Every shoe on the floor had a designer name stamped inside. She stared at them for a long time, then turned away. The next morning, she drove herself to a strip mall she had only ever looked at from her car. Inside a big-box clothing store, harsh lights hummed overhead. She walked past racks of discount shirts and jeans, feeling oddly exposed without an assistant shadowing her. She picked up a pair of worn-in jeans, a gray hoodie, a plain black coat. At the register, she paid in cash. The teenager ringing her up did not look twice at her face. Back at the penthouse, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. The hoodie hung looser on her than her usual fitted blouses. She wiped away most of her makeup, leaving only a hint of color in her cheeks. "Lena Moore," she said to her own reflection, testing the name on her tongue. It had belonged to a girl she had known in college, someone who dropped out after a year and went back to Idaho. It felt ordinary, which was the point. She practiced the story she would tell. Freelance marketing, she would say, remote work, driving to Columbus to stay with a friend, passing through. Her phone lit with new emails. She turned it face down and crossed to the small table by the window where the wooden pencil lay. She picked it up and slipped it into the pocket of her coat. The rental agency was quiet when she arrived. A clerk handed over the keys to a gray Honda Civic that smelled faintly of stale air freshener. Charlotte signed the papers as Lena Moore, the fake name looping neatly under the printed line. In the parking lot, she slid behind the wheel and adjusted the seat. The engine started with a soft, unremarkable vibration, a far cry from the smooth power of the Mercedes. Her fingers found the pencil in her coat pocket. She closed her hand around it and looked once at the Chicago skyline in the distance, all glass and steel and obligation. Then she put the car in drive and pulled onto the road, following the route on the screen toward a small town in Ohio, where a man with oil on his hands had once carried her out of fire and steam and walked away. The highway narrowed as the miles slipped past. The gray of morning opened into a thin, washed light that made the fields along Route 41 look almost silver. The farther Charlotte drove, the more the city fell away piece by piece until there were no more glass towers, no more merge lanes, only barns, billboards for seed companies, and the occasional gas station. The sign for Cedar Falls appeared at the side of the road, green paint chipped at the corners. Population 23,000, elevation a number she barely registered. She eased off the accelerator and followed the curve that led toward town. Cedar Falls revealed itself slowly, a brick main street, a diner with a long row of windows and a neon sign that buzzed softly, a hardware store with tools in the window and a hand-lettered sign that promised key cutting and blade sharpening, a park with a swing set, the chains creaking under the weight of no one. She drove past the white church with its steeple and the little movie theater with a single poster taped inside the glass door. The names meant nothing to her, but the layout already felt familiar, like a small painting she had seen once and could still recall from memory. Mercer Auto sat a block off the main street at the edge where the town started to thin again. The building was squat and square, paint flaking from the siding, the garage door open to a dark interior. A hand-painted sign hung above the entrance letters, slightly uneven, the blue-faded Mercer Auto. No appointment needed. She did not pull in on the first pass. Her hands tightened on the wheel, and she kept driving, letting the Civic roll past as if she were just another stranger passing through. From the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of him. A man under a raised truck hood ball cap low over his brow shoulders, bent in concentration. Near the open bay sat a boy on an upside-down crate, bent over a pad of paper pencil moving. Charlotte swallowed, rounded the block, parked 2 streets over. Her heart beat too hard in her chest. It was not fear exactly, but something close. Something like standing at the edge of a very high diving board water far below, clear and cold. She sat in the parked car for a full minute, staring at the steering wheel. Then she started the engine again and turned the Civic back toward the garage. This time she pulled directly into the gravel lot, tires crunching. A bell attached to the doorframe jingled as her front bumper crossed the threshold of the open bay. The man under the truck did not look up at first. He spoke without seeing her. "Be right with you." His voice was deep steady. It rolled through the space like another kind of engine noise, familiar somehow, even though she had only ever heard it once at the side of a road while half-conscious and bleeding. The boy glanced over. He had Sarah's kind of eyes, the thoughtful kind that gathered details and stored them away. His gaze flicked from the Civic to her face and back. Charlotte stepped out of the car. The air inside the garage was warmer than outside, thick with the smell of oil rubber and a faint sweetness from coffee, left too long on a hot plate. Somewhere a radio played an old rock song tinny through the static. She tugged at the hem of her thrift store hoodie and tried to remember how someone who was just passing through might stand. "Hi," she said. "My car is making this noise, kind of a rattling. It started on the highway." The man rolled from under the truck on a creeper and sat up. For a second his eyes went past her out to the road, the habit of someone always aware of his surroundings. Then they landed on her. He was younger than she remembered in the blur of pain and sirens, though the lines around his eyes looked older when he squinted in the light. There were flecks of grease on his forearms, a smudge on his jaw, where he had probably brushed at sweat with the back of his hand. "You just hear it at certain speeds or all the time?" he asked. She forced herself to break eye contact as if they were strangers, which to him they were. "Mostly when I get over 50. He wiped his hands on a rag and approached the car. "You passing through or new in town?" "Passing through," she said. "Headed to Columbus. Thought I should get it checked before it turns into something serious." He nodded, listening to the engine as he told her to start it up. The Civic shuddered a little as it came to life more from age than anything else. He leaned close, head cocked, then popped the hood and examined the belts and hoses, fingers moving with practiced care. The boy had set his pencil down. He watched Charlotte with the open curiosity of an 8-year-old who has not yet learned to hide his questions. "What is your name?" he asked. She turned toward him. "Lena." she said, the lie sliding out smoother than she liked. Lena Moore. He blinked as if weighing the name. I'm Eli. That your car seat now, sir, he added, pointing at the Civic. For now, she answered. They gave it to me at the rental place. It smells like pine and something burned. That is the air freshener, Eli said, and probably the car. He picked up his pencil again. Charlotte stepped closer to see. On his page, a hand was taking shape lines. Careful knuckles, shaded tendons, hinted with soft strokes. The hand was rough and knitted fingers thick, a watch band peeking from just beyond the wrist. That is very good, she said. Eli shrugged, but his ears flushed slightly. It is just my dad's hand. He said I need to practice stuff that is still. Hands are not easy, she said. Most people avoid them. You did not. The man straightened from the engine bay. Loose belt, he said. Nothing too dramatic. I can tighten it up. Check a few other things. You have a half hour. She nodded, relieved at the ordinary sound of it. A loose belt. Something small. Something she could pay for without using a card that would scream hail at receipt printers. He named a price that surprised her. It was low enough to sound almost suspicious to someone who lived in a world where mechanics charged triple for less. She understood why people in town sent him business. Is that the real number or the neighbor number? She asked before she could stop herself. He frowned slightly, not offended, just curious. It is the number for what it takes. Parts and time. You can sit inside if you want. There is coffee. Not good coffee, but it is hot. He jerked his chin toward a small office at the side of the bay. The glass in its window was clouded at the corners. I am fine here, she said. I like watching. He turned away again back into the hood, his body folding into the shape of work. Eli shifted on his crate. Do you draw? He asked. Sometimes, she said. He hesitated, then held out his sketchbook, offering it up like something fragile. She took it carefully. The pages were filled with more hands, with quick studies of cars, with a few rough self-portraits that did not quite meet the eye. There were also trees. The oak in the backyard, she guessed, drawn from different angles, always with a certain curve in the branches, as if it were reaching towards something just out of frame. You see light, she said. Not everyone does. How can you see light? Eli asked. In the way you shade, she replied. See here on this branch. You left the top lighter like the sun is coming from above. And this side of the hand is darker. You understand that light changes everything. He looked at the page, then at her. My mom said stuff like that, he murmured. Jack glanced over at them. His expression softened for a beat. Then he turned back to the engine. By the time he tightened the last bolt and closed the hood, Eli and Charlotte were bent over a new page, her hand moving in the air above the paper as she described how to make a flat shape feel round. You can try thinking of it like carving, she said. You take away what you do not need so the right shape appears. Pencils and knives are not that different. Jack wiped his hands and approached. You are all set, he said to her. I checked the fluids too. You were a little low on oil. Try to change that on schedule. She pulled her wallet from her bag and counted out bills. She had thought ahead enough to bring cash notes crisp from the bank. As she handed them over, she tried to fold the edges, make them seem less new. He noticed anyway. He noticed everything. You from a city, he asked. Not rude, just measuring. Chicago, she said. He raised an eyebrow. You are a long way from there. She shrugged. Needed to get out for a while. Work lets me travel. Remote stuff. He nodded, accepting this. Or at least deciding not to press. Thank you, she said, for taking me without an appointment. That sign up there makes promises, he answered. I try to keep them. She hesitated, reaching for the car door. Do you know if there is a cheap motel nearby? She asked. I might need to stay one night before I keep driving. The Cedar Inn is out by the highway, he said. Cheap enough. Smells a little like cigarettes. But the sheets are clean. Eli added, the diner across from it has good pie. You do not like pie, Jack said. I like pie that is not from our freezer, Eli replied. She smiled. I will keep that in mind. She drove away slower this time, feeling 3 pairs of eyes on her back. 2 brown, 1 blue. The Cedar Inn was exactly as Jack had described. The clerk barely looked up as she signed the paper with her new name. The room smelled faintly of smoke and cleaning fluid. The bedspread had a pattern of flowers that had once been bright and now were the color of old photographs. She sat on the edge of the bed and pulled the pencil from her pocket, set it on the nightstand. For a moment, she placed her fingertips on it as if grounding herself. Outside, trucks rolled past on the highway, their engines a low, constant growl. She stayed the night. In the morning, she drove back to Mercer Auto. The second time she arrived, no one looked surprised. Jack was under a different car. Eli sat on his crate already sketching. Car again, Jack asked. Probably my imagination, she said. There is a noise, or I am looking for one. He listened to the engine, then popped the gas cap and tightened it. Sometimes a loose cap will set the sensors off, he said. No charge. Nothing, she asked. You drove all the way from Chicago. You went through enough. Let the car have one freebie. Eli had walked over to her window. Did you go to the diner? He asked. I did, she said. You were right about the pie. A small spark of pride lit his face. After that, her car developed a talent for small problems. A squeak in the brakes, a rattle in the door, a vibration she could not quite explain. Sometimes the problem was real. Sometimes she tapped something loose herself, in the motel parking lot, fingers clumsy with guilt. Each visit slid her further into the rhythm of their days. She learned that Jack drank his coffee black and too hot, that he kept a jar of bolts on the shelf, just because he liked the way they looked, that he always double-checked his work, even when no one was watching. She learned that Eli hated team sports, but loved school art class, that he pretended to forget his lunch so he could sit at the quiet table near the window, that his eyes went distant when someone mentioned the hospital. She did not speak Sarah's name. She did not ask what had happened. She read between the photographs in the kitchen and the way Jack's mouth pinched when he glanced at the blue S mug in the cabinet. They ate dinner together for the first time on a Tuesday when the Civic needed more than a loose gas cap. There is a leak in your radiator, Jack said. I should not let you take it back out on the highway like that. I can patch it enough to hold, but it is going to take a couple of hours. I can wait at the motel, she said. Walking, Jack looked at her shoes' thin soles, the sky that already threatened rain. It is a bit of a hike. I have an umbrella, she said, though she did not. Or Eli said from the corner, you could stay for spaghetti. Jack shot him a look. What Eli asked. You said it tastes better with more people. Jack opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. He rubbed at a spot of grease on his wrist that was not actually there. If you do not mind simple food, he said. I would like that, she replied, and meant it more than she expected. Their house looked different from the inside than it had on her laptop screen. The floors creaked faintly in the hallway. The kitchen walls were a soft yellow that had faded at the corners. A row of photos lined a narrow shelf, all of them holding versions of the same three faces: Jack, younger and less tired, Eli, smaller and rounder, Sarah, her hair in different lengths, always smiling toward the camera in a way that seemed to include whoever stood behind it. Eli set the table with practiced movements. 2 forks again, then hesitating before adding a third. Jack boiled water, the sound of it growing louder as it reached a rolling boil. Do you get many guests? She asked, watching him stir sauce in a faded pot. Not really, he said. My neighbor drops casseroles sometimes. Friends from the shop swing by. That is about it. The sauce smelled like garlic and tomatoes, and something sweet, maybe a hint of sugar to cut the acid. When he ladled it over the spaghetti, steam clouded the air between them for a moment. They ate with the television off. Eli twirled his fork carefully, watching her reaction. This is very good, she said. You could sell this. Jack snorted softly. I fix cars. I cook so my kid does not starve. That is the full list. He said it lightly, but she heard the layer underneath. There were other things he had once done, other things he had lost. At one point, Eli pointed at a framed photo on the wall. That was Mom's garden, he said. She grew tomatoes bigger than your head. Not that big, Jack said. Big enough, Eli insisted. Charlotte studied the photo. Sarah knelt in the dirt, a smear of soil across one cheek, her hands wrapped around a cluster of tomatoes. Jack stood behind her, looking down at her with a softness that made something catch in Charlotte's throat. She looks kind, Charlotte said. She was, Eli replied. Her gaze lingered. She took in the way the sunlight hit Sarah's hair, the way shadows fell across the leaves, the composition that had likely been accidental but still worked. She wondered if anyone had kept Sarah's paintings. After dinner, Eli escaped to his room, claiming homework. Jack and Charlotte stood side by side at the sink, gowns moving in the small, choreographed dance of dishwashing. One washed, one dried. You said you do remote work, he said after a while. Marketing? Something like that, she said. You ever work with art? He asked. Her hand paused on the plate she was drying. Why? You talk about light the way people do who have spent time around paintings, he said. People here like art, but they do not talk about it like that. She rinsed a glass, feeling the cool water on her skin. I used to consult for galleries, she said. It was not a lie. Help them figure out how to sell what they had. Did you like it? He asked. Parts of it, she answered. She did not elaborate. He did not push. As autumn slid toward winter, the routines they had stumbled into became something close to habit. Her car did not need to break as often. She came by sometimes just to drop off coffee, or to bring Eli new sketch pads, claiming she had picked up extras for herself. She found herself arriving just as the school bus dropped him at the corner. She began to recognize the other kids in his class, the rhythm of their afternoons. Some days she helped with homework at the small kitchen table, patient with math problems that made her head ache. Other days they sat in the garage, heads bent over pages, where she showed him how to layer graphite to build depth. Under her guidance, his drawings changed. They grew more precise, more confident. He learned how to suggest texture, how to imply light without drawing the sun. "Do you know about scholarships?" she asked Jack one evening, as Eli worked on a landscape in the next room. "For college," he said. "He is 8. "There are programs," she replied, "for kids with talent. Summer camps, workshops. They are not cheap, but some have grants." He gave her a wary look. "We get by." "I am not saying you do not," she said. "I am saying people would be lucky to invest in him. You should at least know what is out there." She scribbled a few names on a notepad, the names of places she had once cut checks for without thinking. She slid the paper across the table and immediately regretted it. It felt too close to the other life creeping in at the edges. Jack read the names, then folded the paper and tucked it into his wallet, alongside the old note from the school nurse about Eli's heart. On a Thursday in early December, the first snow of the season melted as soon as it touched the ground. The air held a damp chill. The garage felt smaller with all the doors closed. Charlotte Sieg sat with Eli at the workbench, guiding his hand as he tried charcoal for the first time. The black dust smeared across their fingers left soft smudges on their wrists. "Use the side of it," she said, "not the point. Let it float over the paper." He tried, and a sky appeared where there had been only white a moment before. Jack moved between work and the office phone calls and invoices. He caught snatches of their conversation without really listening, more aware of the sound of Eli's laugh when she teased him about the smudge on his nose. Her phone shoved deep in her bag began to buzz. She ignored it. It buzzed again. On the third time it switched to a different tone, one she had forgotten she had set. A strand of Bach on a tinny loop. Jack glanced up. She hesitated, then fished the phone out, thumb pressing the accept button, before she could think better of it. "Charlotte, we have a situation," a man's voice barked through the speaker. "Basil is moving up their timeline. The board needs you in Chicago by Monday. The donors are restless and your father is losing patience." She reacted on instinct, stabbing the speaker icon to silence the outer sound and lifting the phone to her ear. She turned her back, walked a few steps away. "I told you I am unavailable," she said, voice slipping into a cooler, sharper register. "Handle it. That is why I pay you." "You cannot be unreachable forever," the man said. "The foundation needs a face. Your name is on every wall we have paid for. You disappear, people notice." "I am not discussing this here," she snapped. She hung up and stood still, the phone buzzing in her hand as new texts stacked up. She could feel Jack's eyes on her back, Eli's too. She took a breath, then turned. Both of them were watching. Eli's charcoal-stained fingers hovered above the page. Jack leaned against the workbench, one brow slightly raised. "That was work," she said. She chose her words carefully, kept her tone light. "They do not understand the concept of time off." "They called you Charlotte," Eli said. Her heart lurched. "It is a nickname," she said, "from before. They forget I have tried to leave that behind." Jack did not say anything. His gaze had sharpened in a way she had not seen before. "What kind of work was it, again?" he asked. "Consulting." "Art consulting, yes," she said. "Museums, foundations, rich people with walls to fill. I left a while ago." "People like that do not usually let go easy," he said. His tone was neutral, but the weight of his attention was not. He pushed off the workbench and moved back toward the car he had been working on. The matter apparently dropped. The air between them felt different, though, thinner, as if a window had opened a crack and let in a draft. That night, snow dusted the roofs of Cedar Falls, catching in the branches of the oak tree in the Mercer's backyard. Inside the house, Jack pulled the blue S mug down from the cabinet and set it on the counter next to his own. He did not fill it. He stood there a long moment staring at both mugs, then put Sarah's back on the shelf. In his wallet, the folded piece of paper with scholarship names shifted as he closed it, pressing against the older note about Eli's heart. Somewhere beneath layers of ink and paper, an engine of another kind waited quiet, its rhythm not quite as steady as everyone wanted to believe. Snow clung to Cedar Falls in thin, patchy sheets that December. It gathered along the edges of rooftops and in the crooks of tree branches, not quite enough for sledding, just enough to make the world quieter. Main Street put on its yearly effort. Someone had strung colored lights along the lampposts, and the hardware store had a plastic reindeer in the window. The diner put a small tree up near the door, its ornaments mismatched and a little crooked. The movie theater added a strand of lights around its one poster box and played the same holiday film on repeat. Charlotte walked down the sidewalk one afternoon with a paper cup of coffee from the diner, watching her breath mix with the steam. Her rental coat was not quite warm enough. Chicago winter had been brutal once. Now the cold here felt cleaner, sharper, as if it had fewer expectations. She had spent the morning at the garage watching Eli draw and feeling the weight of Jack's sidelong glances. Since that phone call, he had not asked more questions, but the air around him had shifted, a degree colder, a little more distance, as if he were stepping back from something he had almost reached for. In the thrift store on the corner, a cardboard sign in the window read, "Holiday Sale" in red marker. Inside, a single string of tinsel drooped over a rack of coats. She pushed the door open, a small bell chiming overhead. It smelled like old fabric and dust, and something floral that clung to the back wall. She walked the aisles without really seeing the clothes. Her hands touched worn denim flannel shirts, jackets with someone else's name stitched inside. Near the back, on a table with old books and board games, she saw it, a wooden box scuffed at the corners. When she lifted the lid, a faint smell of cedar rose. Inside, nestled in a row, were pencils. Not cheap school pencils, but a set of fine graphite sticks in different softness levels, each labeled with a small stamped number. They had been used, but not much. The tips were still sharp from a careful hand. Someone had started, then stopped. Her throat tightened. She ran her thumb along one pencil, smearing a bit of graphite across her skin. "How much for this?" she asked the woman at the counter. "$5," the woman said. "Or $2 if you take that box of sheet music with it. Nobody ever buys the sheet music." Charlotte paid $5 and left the sheet music behind. Back at the Cedar Inn, she placed the box on the small table by the window and opened it again just to look. The pencils sat in neat order, waiting for a hand that knew what to do with them. She closed the lid, then picked it up and held it against her chest for a moment. On Christmas Eve, Cedar Falls glowed more than it usually did. The church on the hill had its candles in the windows. The park's tree was lit with white lights that reflected off the thin crust of snow. Mercer Auto had closed early. Jack's truck sat in the driveway, its bed dusted white. Charlotte parked the Civic at the curb and turned the engine off. The box of pencils lay on the passenger seat, wrapped in simple brown paper and tied with kitchen string she had bought at the grocery store. There was a tiny tag tucked under the knot with Eli's name written in her careful hand. She sat for a second, watching her breath fog the windshield. Her phone, face down in the cup holder, had vibrated itself into a slow slide, earlier lit with messages she did not read. She had turned the ringer off. The front steps creaked under her weight. Eli opened the door before she could knock. "You are late," he said. "I am exactly on time," she replied. "That is what late people say." He stepped aside to let her in. Warmth washed over her, along with the smell of tomato sauce and garlic. The small tree in the corner of the living room was decorated with paper stars and a few tired glass balls that had seen better years. Jack stood in the kitchen stirring a pot. He looked up as she entered, eyes flicking to the gift in her hand. "You did not have to bring anything," he said. "I did not know the rules," she answered, "so I made one up." Eli hovered, trying not to stare at the package. "Presents are for after dinner," Jack said. "We have standards in this house." "We have spaghetti," Eli said. "That is the standard." They ate crowded around the small table. The sauce was thicker than usual, and there was a loaf of garlic bread from the deli that Jack had sliced and toasted in the oven. Eli talked more than he usually did, describing a snowman someone on his bus route had built with a traffic cone for a hat. Charlotte listened, watching the way Jack's shoulders relaxed when Eli laughed. She added stories of her own edited versions of childhood winters that had taken place in cities where snow turned gray in hours and never looked as soft as it did in the photo cards people sent. After the dishes were rinsed and stacked to dry, Eli finally turned to her, unable to wait any longer. "Can we do presents now?" he asked. "Go grab yours for your dad first," Jack said. Eli ran to his room and came back with a small, lumpy bundle wrapped in newspaper comics. He handed it to Jack with both hands. Inside was a keychain. It had a tiny metal wrench on it and the words "World's Okayest Mechanic" stamped in crooked letters. "You chose that yourself, huh?" Jack said, but there was a smile at the corner of his mouth. "I wanted the one that said World's Best, but Mrs. Peterson said that sounded like bragging," Eli said. "So I picked this." "I like this better," Jack said. "Too much pressure on the other one." He clipped it to his keys right there, the small wrench catching the kitchen light. Eli turned to Charlotte, eyes bright. "Can I open mine?" She held out the brown paper package. His fingers tore at the string, careful at first, then more eager as the lid of the box came into view. He lifted it and froze. For a second the room was quiet. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the wall clock, the whisper of wind against the window. Then he opened the box. He reached in slowly, as if afraid the pencils might vanish if he moved too quickly. He picked one up and rolled it between his fingers. Graphite dust left a faint gray shadow on his skin. "These are nice," he said softly. "They belong to someone who started something and did not finish," she said. "Thought you might do better." Jack stepped closer, looking over his son's shoulder. His eyes moved from the pencils to Charlotte. "How much did those set you back?" he asked. "Sucht. It was a thrift store find," she said, "and I got a bargain." He studied her face, as if measuring the truth of that. "They are professional," he said. "He does not need professional. He needs tools that do what his hands ask," she replied. "He already has the rest." Eli glanced between them, sensing the current under their words. He closed the box, then hugged it to his chest. "I like them," he said. "I like them a lot." Jack exhaled slowly, the fight leaving his shoulders. "Say thank you," he said. "Thank you," Eli said. "You are welcome," she answered. "They come with one condition." Eli's eyes widened. "What condition?" "You have to actually use them," she said. "Let them get ugly. Let the box wear out. No keeping them on a shelf." "That is two conditions," he said, but he was smiling. Later, after Eli had fallen asleep in the living room, under a blanket box clutched against his chest, Jack and Charlotte found themselves in the kitchen again. He poured coffee for both of them. The pot almost emptied, the flavor somewhere between bitter and burnt. They sat at the table with their mugs between their hands. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For the coffee?" she asked. "For making tonight feel like a thing again," he said. She stared into her mug. The thin surface shimmered, catching the reflection of the small kitchen light. "It never stopped being one," she said. "Maybe it just did not have enough people at the table." They sat in a pocket of silence that was not uncomfortable. The house creaked softly around them. Somewhere in the distance, a car passed on the main road, its tires hissing on the thin snow. "You know they are not going to stop calling," he said after a while. Who, she asked, though she knew. "Whoever that was on the phone," he said. "The ones who kept saying your other name?" She wrapped her hands tighter around the mug. "They pay me for decisions," she said. "Then they forget I get to make some of my own." "You walked away from that," he asked. "All that money, big offices, fancy coffee." "I needed room to breathe," she said. "You live up there long enough, you forget what air smells like without polished wood and perfume." He watched her. She kept her gaze on the table. "You could have told us your name," he said. "I still can," she replied. He did not answer. His hand moved toward hers on the table, stopped short, then withdrew as if he had remembered something important. He pushed his chair back instead and stood collecting the empty mugs. The next week slid by in a rhythm of snow salt and routine. The days were short. Darkness fell early, pooling in the corners of the garage by mid-afternoon. Jack worked with the doors closed more often, the heater humming as it tried to keep up with the cold. Eli came home from school with pink cheeks and gloves wet from half-hearted snowball fights. Sometimes he seemed fine. Other times he came in quieter shoulders, a little more hunched. One afternoon he dropped his backpack by the door and leaned on the wall for a beat longer than usual. "You all right?" Jack asked. "Just tired," Eli said. "We had gym. We had to run laps." "You keep up." "Okay." Jack tried to keep it casual. "Sort of," Eli said. "My chest got weird." "We will have the doctor look at it next month," Jack said, more to himself than to Eli. He dug in his wallet later and found the nurse's note still folded in the back pocket. The creases had deepened. He smoothed it out on the counter, read the words again. Murmur, follow-up, suggested, non-urgent. He folded it back up and told himself January was not far. In Chicago, Patrick Doyle's office light burned late, files stacked in neat piles on his desk. He had followed Charlotte's digital trail as far as he could, then watched it go quiet. There were still traces. Credit card charges that did not match her usual pattern. Gas stations in Ohio. A motel in Cedar Falls. Her father had not been pleased. "She is running around in small towns," he had said. "Find out if she is alone, if she is safe. Then bring me news I can use." Patrick had done this work long enough to recognize when a missing person did not want to be found. He also knew when someone was not really missing, only misplaced in a way that had more to do with the heart than any map. Snow had crusted over Cedar Falls the day Patrick arrived. He waited until he was sure the garage would be closed before he knocked on the door of the Mercer house. It was early evening. The sky held the last fading light. The porch light flicked on as Jack opened the door. The man standing there wore a dark overcoat and polished shoes that did not belong on a gravel driveway. His hair was damp from melted snow. "Mr. Mercer," he asked. "That depends who is asking," Jack said. "My name is Patrick Doyle," he replied. "I am a private investigator. I was hoping to ask you a few questions about someone you might know." Jack's shoulders tensed. For a fleeting second he thought of old unpaid bills or some bureaucratic oversight, but Patrick's eyes were too sharp, his folder too slim. You have the wrong house, Jack said. We mind our own business here. Patrick opened the folder and pulled out a single photograph. He held it out without stepping inside. The woman in the photo wore a sleek black dress and stood in front of a large painting washed in blues and gold. Her hair was pinned up, her makeup flawless. At her side, a plaque on the wall read, "Hale Foundation Gallery," in crisp letters. Jack recognized her immediately. He said nothing. "This is Charlotte Hale," Patrick said, "CEO of Hale Art Group. She went off radar several months ago after a car accident. Her family has been concerned." Jack's hand tightened on the edge of the door. "I do not know her," he said. Patrick looked at him, then at the hallway behind him, where a pair of small sneakers lay kicked off next to larger boots. Somewhere in the house, a television murmured low. "She pays me to find things," Patrick said. "Your face was in the last thing I found. Security footage from a hospital parking lot. You carried her out of a totaled car and left before anyone could ask who you were." He spoke matter-of-factly without accusation. "She seemed interested in the fact that you did not ask for anything," he went on. "Interested enough to hire me to learn your name. After that, it got quieter. Her cards started showing up in different places. Cedar Falls, a motel on the edge of town, a diner that does not serve anything organic." Jack's heart hammered in his chest. The house felt smaller. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because she has people who depend on her," Patrick said. "Employees, beneficiaries. A father who is more worried about donors than about his daughter, but worried all the same. And because from where I sit, it looks like she may have attached herself to yours." He nodded toward the living room, where Eli's voice rose in a brief laugh at something on the screen. "I am not here to cause trouble," Patrick said. "I am here to say that the person you know as Lena has another life. A very large, very public one, if she has not told you that you deserve to hear it before it knocks on your door in a less polite way." He handed over a card. It was heavier than standard paper, the edges crisp. "If you want the short version, you can call," he said, "or you can Google. I imagine she has not mentioned that option either." Jack took the card more out of reflex than intent. Patrick stepped back onto the porch. The snow squeaked under his shoes. "For what it is worth," he said, "I think she came here looking for something real. People with her kind of money do not usually hire someone like me to track down a mechanic because their lawyers tell them to. They send checks. They send spokespeople. She came herself." He tipped his head once, then walked toward his rental car, a dark shape against the thin layer of snow. Jack shut the door and stood in the hallway, the card in his hand, the photo burned into his vision. The name printed under the phone number read, "Patrick Doyle Investigations." From the living room, Eli called Dad. "The movie is starting." "Be right there," Jack said. He slipped the card into his pocket, the edges digging against his fingers. That night, he sat at the kitchen table long after Eli went to bed. The house was quiet, the clock on the stove the only sound. He opened his laptop. It was old and slow, its screen slightly dim at the corners. The search bar waited. He typed Charlotte Hale Art and pressed enter. Images flooded the screen, magazine covers, photos from gala openings, headlines about acquisitions and donations. Charlotte in gowns and tailored suits, standing under spotlights, shaking hands with people Jack had only ever seen on television. He clicked one article at random and scanned. Words like Heiress Billion Foundation Board Legacy. He reached into his pocket and set Patrick's card next to the laptop. The two rectangles of paper sat side by side, one glossy with a polished logo, the other plain. He closed the laptop without finishing the article. Outside, the wind picked up. Bare branches scraped lightly against the house. The next afternoon, the sky was the color of dirty cotton. Jack kept his head under the hood of a sedan as long as he could, every bolt a small refuge from the thoughts crowding in. He heard the familiar crunch of tires on gravel before he saw the Civic. The bell at the doorframe chimed as it crossed into the bay. "Hey," Charlotte called. "I think my brakes are making that squeak again." Her voice was light, almost playful. She had a knit hat pulled low over her ears, cheeks flushed from the cold. Eli, who had been erasing a line on his latest sketch, looked up and grinned. Jack wiped his hands and walked toward the front of the car. He stopped, halfway reached into his pocket, and pulled out the photograph Patrick had left behind. He held it up where she could see it. Her smile faltered. The color drained from her face so quickly, it made him feel for an instant like he had struck her. She stepped closer, eyes locked on the image. Her gown, the painting behind her, the plaque with her name. A life she had folded and left in another city. "Where did you get that?" she asked. "Someone came looking for you," he said. "Seems you have people who care where you sleep at night." He did not raise his voice. The anger sat low, tight held in check by something heavier. Eli stood very still by the workbench sketchbook, forgotten in his hands. His gaze moved from the photo to her face, trying to understand. Charlotte swallowed. For a second she seemed younger, stripped of the polish that's usually clung to her, even in this borrowed life. "I can explain," she said. "Good," Jack said. "Because right now I have a woman who eats at my table, teaches my son, and lies to my face every time I ask who she is." The words were blunt. They landed between them like tools dropped from a height. Eli flinched slightly. Charlotte glanced at him, then back at Jack. "My name is Charlotte Hale," she said. Saying it out loud in that garage felt strange, as if she were trying on someone else again. "My family owns Hale Art Group, the galleries, the foundation, all the things you saw if you looked me up." "I did not need to look long," he said. "Your face is everywhere." She winced. "That car accident," she said. "The one on Route 41. That was not my first wake-up call, but it was the loudest. Everyone I know talked about insurance and liability and spin. You were the only one who walked away." He did not respond. "I spent my whole life being someone people wanted something from," she said quietly. "Money, access, a name on a wall. You pulled me out of that car and then disappeared. You did not wait for a reporter. You did not ask for a single thing. I did not understand that. I needed to see what kind of life created that kind of person." "So you made one up for yourself," he said, "to come check out the zoo." "It was not like that," she said. "You came in here pretending to be stranded," he said. "You watched my kid. You sat at my table. You listened to stories about my wife. You kept your own under lock and key. I did not know how to come here as Charlotte," she said. "If I had walked up in one of those dresses and said I wanted to see how regular people live, you would have slammed the door in my face." "You were right," he said. Eli moved closer, his voice small. "Your name is not Lena?" he asked. She looked at him, then really looked, and something in her eyes crumpled. "It was a name I borrowed," she said. "You lied," he said. The simple statement hurt more than Jack's accusations. She reached out instinctively, then let her hand drop. "I should have told you sooner," she said. "Every day it got harder to say. Every time you both let me in a little more, it felt like I would lose you the second I told the truth." "You were always going to lose us," Jack said. "Sooner or later. People like you do not stay here. You get on planes and go to meetings and send checks when you feel bad. You do not sit on milk crates and watch a boy draw." "I wanted to," she said. "Wanting and doing are not the same," he answered. "You had a choice not to lie." Silence pressed in. The heater hummed. A car passed on the street outside, tires whispering over the thin snow. Eli's fingers tightened on the edge of his sketchbook. "Did you come here because of the accident?" he asked her. "Yes," she said, "because your dad saved my life." "And you did not tell him that either," he said. She shook her head. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back. She had cried enough behind tinted windows. The air in the garage smelled like oil and cold metal and the faint graphite dust that clung to Eli's desk. She wanted to memorize it. "I love being here," she said, "with both of you. I never felt like that in Chicago, not once." Jack's jaw tightened. "You love the idea of us," he said. "The mechanic and the talented kid in the small town. The ones who do not know your last name. It makes a nice story when your world gets too polished." "That is not fair," she said. He laughed once, short and humorless. "I have an 8-year-old who has already buried one parent," he said. "You walked in here on a lie and made yourself a fixture. That is not fair." Eli swallowed. His eyes shimmered. "You are leaving," he said. It was not a question. Charlotte knelt down so she was level with him. The floor was cold under her knees. "I do not know what I am doing," she said, and it was the truest thing she had said all day. "I know I hurt you. I'm sorry for that. You are not coming back," he said. "I do not get to decide that for you," she said. "Your dad does." He said nothing. She leaned in and pressed her forehead lightly to Eli's. "You are the bravest artist I have ever met," she said softly, so only he could hear. "Do not let anyone tell you that what you see does not matter." She kissed his hair, then whispered words that did not carry to Jack across the room. Whatever she said made Eli nod, his lips pressed together. She rose, turning to Jack. "I will not come back if you do not want me to," she said. "But if anything happens, if you ever need anything, you have a card. You know where I am." He shook his head. "We were fine before you," he said. "We will be fine after you." For a second, something like anger flickered in her eyes, then faded. She nodded once. "Take care of him," she said. "I always have," he answered. She walked to the Civic and opened the door. Her hands trembled a little as she gripped the wheel. Eli stood in the frame of the garage door watching. Jack stayed behind him, one hand on his shoulder. The car backed out, tires crunching on the cold gravel. She did not look over her shoulder. The bell above the doorframe chimed as she passed under it for what felt like the last time. The sound hung in the air long after the Civic turned onto the street and disappeared. Inside the garage, the heater clicked as it shut off. The temperature dropped a few degrees in minutes. Eli stared at the empty space where the car had been. Then he went to his workbench, set his sketchbook down, and opened it to a fresh page. His pencil moved with more pressure than before. He drew a tree first tall and bare branches reaching high, then 3 figures under it. 2, he finished. 1 he started, then stopped. The eraser rubbed at the 3rd, until only a faint outline remained, a ghost of graphite just visible when the light hit at a certain angle. He left the drawing on the kitchen table that night. Jack found it when he turned off the lights, his hand hovering over the paper. He did not touch it. He stood in the doorway of Eli's room, instead watching his son sleep, one arm wrapped around the box of pencils from Charlotte. The boy's chest rose and fell in shallow, steady breaths. Somewhere inside, a small flaw in his heart kept its own rhythm. Snow fell again outside, thicker this time, layering over the old tracks in the driveway, covering the place where a silver car had come and gone. 3 weeks after Charlotte drove away, Cedar Falls felt like someone had turned the volume down on the whole town. Cars still came into Mercer Auto, engines still stalled and leaked and refused to start on cold mornings. Jack still crawled under them and coaxed them back to life. The radio still played the same songs looping through the day. Something in the space between all of that had gone quiet. Eli spent more time in his room. When he sat in the garage, he drew with a focus that looked more like effort than escape. The lines on his pages were tighter now, darker. He used the good pencils but never mentioned where they came from. Sometimes he drew that oak tree in the backyard. Sometimes he drew 3 figures under it. The 3rd figure stayed faint, just a hint of shape, never all the way erased, never fully returned. Mrs. Peterson from next door started knocking more often, casserole dishes in hand, asking if they needed anything. Jack always said no and thanked her anyway. She would look past him into the house with a knowing tilt to her head, and then walk back down the path, boots leaving neat prints in the snow. One night after Eli had gone to bed, Jack sat alone at the kitchen table. The drawing with the erased figure lay under his hand. Byzantin, the folded note from the school nurse about Eli's heart. On top of that, Patrick Doyle's card, a small stack of paper that seemed heavier than it should. The house creaked in the cold. The heater hummed. The clock on the stove clicked each minute into place. He stared at the wall for a long time, at the photos and the little nails that marked places where other frames had once hung. Finally, he stood, walked to the bedroom, and pulled a duffel bag from under the bed. He set it on the chair and unzipped it. The sound was quiet but final in the stillness of the room. The next morning, he told Eli. They stood in the backyard near the oak. Frost rimed the grass. Their breath came out in pale clouds. "We are moving," Jack said. Eli kicked at a patch of frozen ground with the toe of his shoe. "Because of her," he said. "Because it hurts to keep walking past the place where she used to park," Jack answered. "And because there is more work in other towns." "Where?" Eli asked. "Riverbend," Jack said. "In Indiana. I talked to a shop owner there. They need someone who can do more than just change oil." He had found the listing on a bulletin board at the parts store, a little card with a tear-off number. He had called on an impulse and ended up talking to a man named Gus, who sounded tired and honest and in need of help. Eli stared at the trunk of the oak. His fingers traced the carved heart there, the initials inside dulled by weather, S+J. Sarah and Jack captured in bark from a younger time. "Can I bring my drawings?" he asked. "As many as will fit in the truck," Jack said. And the pencils, Eli said, almost too quiet to hear. Jack looked at his son's profile, the sharp line of his nose, the way his mouth held itself steady. "The pencils are yours," Jack said. "They come with us." Eli nodded once. They packed what they could into the pickup and a small trailer over the next few days. Clothes, tools, boxes of dishes wrapped in old newspapers, Eli's sketchbook stacked in a plastic tub. The box of pencils rode in the cab between them. On the last morning in Cedar Falls, Mrs. Peterson hugged Eli so tightly he squirmed. "You call me," she said. "Your dad will forget, but you will not." "Yes, ma'am," he replied. She pressed a slip of paper with her number into his hand, even though he already knew it. Jack locked the front door and held the keys for a moment, then walked next door and set them on Mrs. Peterson's kitchen counter. "In case someone wants the place before I get back to sign papers," he said. "I will keep an eye on it," she answered. "You go find something good." He nodded, not trusting himself to say more. When he got back in the truck, Eli was looking at the house through the windshield, quiet. As they turned out of the driveway, the oak tree stood in the rearview mirror for a long time, then dwindled to a dark knot against the pale winter sky. Riverbend announced itself with a green sign off the highway just like Cedar Falls had, but the town wore its edges differently, more traffic, more shops on the main drag. A small college on one side, the campus buildings a mix of old brick and new glass. Their new apartment sat above a narrow deli that smelled like bread and garlic from early morning until late at night. The stairs up to their door were steep and creaked on the third step. Inside, the space was smaller than their Cedar Falls house but felt surprisingly solid. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen windows that looked out over the street. Jack stood in the middle of the living room, with a box in his arms listening. There were sounds he was not used to. The hum of the deli's refrigerators below, voices on the sidewalk, a bus sighing to a stop at the corner. "What do you think?" he asked. Eli walked the perimeter of the room, hand brushing the walls as if checking for cracks. "The light is good," he said, glancing toward the window. That seemed like enough. Gus's auto shop was 10 blocks away in a low building, with 2 bays and a small sign that read, Riverbend Auto Care, in plain letters. The parking lot was busy with sedans and a few work trucks. Gus himself was a big man with a gut that pushed against his stained t-shirt and a beard he'd gone mostly gray. His handshake was strong and left a faint smell of cigarette smoke on Jack's skin. "You Mercer?" Gus asked. "That is me." Jack said. "You start Monday," Gus said. "You work, you get paid. You do not, you do not. That's simple." "I can work," Jack said. He did. Riverbend Auto Care had more customers and more chaos than Mercer Auto had ever seen. Jack found himself elbow deep in newer models, newer problems. The days were long. The noise and the work kept his mind from drifting as much as it might have. Eli started at a new school where nobody knew his story. On his first day, the teacher introduced him simply as our new friend Eli, who moved here from Ohio. No one said the word widow. No one said accident. No one looked at him with the soft pity he had seen in Cedar Falls. His art teacher, Mrs. Flores, was small and sharp-eyed, with paint always on her hands. On the second week of class, she stopped at his desk and stared at the landscape taking shape on his page. "Who taught you to shade like that?" she asked. "My mom," he said, then after a beat and someone else. Mrs. Flores nodded, as if this made perfect sense. "Keep going," she said. "You have something in your hand. Do not let it get lazy." Eli brought home assignments that smelled faintly of tempera paint and glue. He talked a little about school, more about the art room. He said nothing about Charlotte. Jack did not ask. The box of pencils sat on Eli's small desk and his new room lid closed when he was not there, open when he was. The wooden pencil that had started everything, the one Jack had dropped at the hospital without knowing, had returned to Eli's hand in Cedar Falls after the crash. He kept it in a place of honor, now resting in a small glass jar beside the newer, sharper tools. Winter in Riverbend came colder and wetter than in Cedar Falls. Rain froze on windshields in the mornings. The river that gave the town its name ran dark and fast under a low bridge. Some nights, Eli coughed a little after running up the stairs. Sometimes he shook off a dizziness that made him grab the railing. Jack watched him out of the corner of his eye, telling himself it was the change in air, the new school, too much excitement. They had been in Riverbend for just over a month when the call came. It was a Friday morning. Jack was at the shop leaning over an engine that refused to catch. The radio played somewhere near the office, someone laughing at a joke he had not heard. Gus stuck his head into the bay, a cordless phone in his hand. "Mercer," he said. "School on the line. They say it is your boy." Jack wiped his hands on a rag and took the phone. "This is Jack," he said. A woman's voice answered, breathless. "Mr. Mercer, this is Mrs. Flores from Riverbend Elementary. Eli collapsed in art class. He is breathing, but the ambulance is here. They are taking him to St. Luke's Children's Hospital." The words did not quite land at first. They hung in the air like smoke. "Collapsed," Jack repeated. "He said he felt dizzy and then sat down," she said. Then he was on the floor. "The nurse is with him. You should meet us there." He was already moving for the door. The drive to St. Luke's blurred into a series of red lights and squealing brakes and the high, thin sound his own breath made in his throat. He barely remembered parking, only the smell of antiseptic that hit him as he stepped through the hospital doors. At the reception desk, he gave his name and Eli's. The woman there tapped at a keyboard, then pointed him toward a set of double doors. "Pediatric ER," she said. "They will tell you more inside." The pediatric emergency department was a strange mix of bright colors and sharp smells. Painted murals of animals and balloons lined the walls, but the air tasted like bleach and something metallic. He saw Mrs. Flores first sitting in a plastic chair with a smear of charcoal still on her wrist. Her face was pale. "They took him in about 10 minutes ago," she said, standing. "He was awake when they loaded him in. Scared, but awake." "Thank you," he managed. A nurse in soft shoes called his name. He followed her into a curtained basket where Eli lay on a narrow bed, a blood pressure cuff around his arm. Small sensors stuck to his chest wires, tracing up to a monitor that beeped steadily. Eli's face was too white. His eyes looked too big. "Hey, bud," Jack said, forcing his voice to stay steady. "You are causing trouble." "Sorry," Eli whispered. A doctor appeared, white coat moving in behind the nurse. He was younger than Jack expected, with dark hair and a kind of serious energy that felt more solid than his age. "I am Dr. Patel," he said. "I am the pediatric cardiologist on call. Your son gave us a scare." He held a tablet with a chart pulled up. The monitor beside the bed beeped in a rhythm that seemed almost normal. "We ran some tests," Dr. Patel said. "An echo, some blood work. It looks like Eli has a congenital heart defect, something he was born with, but it has only now started to cause problems." Jack heard the words, but they moved through his head like water over rocks. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means part of his heart is not formed the way it should be," Dr. Patel said. "He has been compensating for a while, but today it caught up with him. The good news is, we know what it is, and there are procedures to correct it." "And the bad news?" Jack asked. "We should not wait," Dr. Patel said. "He needs surgery soon, within days, not months. The longer we wait, the more strain on the heart." "Surgery," Jack repeated. "It is not simple," Dr. Patel said, "but we do it often. We have an excellent team here. I want to admit him, today run a few more tests and schedule him as soon as we can." Jack looked at his son, at the wires and the tape, and the small hand resting on the blanket. "Do whatever you have to do," he said. "We will have a financial coordinator come to talk to you about insurance and coverage," Dr. Patel said. "First, we stabilize him, then we figure out the rest." He left as quickly as he had come, swept back into the flow of the department. The financial coordinator was a woman in her 40s, with a soft voice and a folder full of forms. She met Jack in a small room off the main corridor that smelled vaguely of coffee and paper. "Your insurance will cover a portion," she said, pointing to a printed estimate. "There will be deductibles out of pocket, maximums anesthesia surgeon fees, hospital stay follow-up. We can set up payment plans. We can also explore charity care and grants, but those applications take time." The number at the bottom of the page made Jack's stomach drop. It might as well have been written in another language. "He needs the surgery now," he said. Yes, she agreed. "And the help comes later," he said. "We do not turn children away," she said gently. "We will do what is medically necessary. The financial side will be a process." He nodded, but the word process might as well have been wall. At some point he found himself in the waiting room, again the pages in his hand damp where his fingers had pressed too hard. The chairs here were soft, upholstered in a pattern that tried to be cheerful. A television in the corner played a cartoon with the sound turned down. He sat there, elbows on his knees, his face in his hands, the smell of antiseptic wrapped around him. In his wallet, Patrick's card pressed against the old note from the nurse and the paper with scholarship names. He took the card out and looked at it, the logo sharp, the number clear. He could call Patrick. Patrick would call her. She would answer. She would come. He slid the card back into his wallet. He lifted his head and stared at the ceiling. "Stubbornness is not a plan," he muttered. The automatic doors hissed open. Footsteps approached on the polished floor. For a moment he thought it was another nurse, another person with another form. Then he heard her voice. "Jack." He looked up. Charlotte stood in the doorway to the waiting room, framed by the fluorescent light. She wore jeans and a dark sweater, a simple coat hanging open. Her hair was pulled back face-free of the careful makeup he had seen in the photos online. There were lines of worry at the corners of her mouth. She looked like herself, both versions at once. He felt his jaw clench. "How did you find us?" he asked. "Patrick called me," she said. "He has a system that flags certain admissions. When Eli's name appeared at St. Luke's, he did not hesitate." Anger flared hot and sharp. "So you have been watching us," he said, "from a safe distance." "I have been making sure you were breathing," she said. "That is different." She stepped closer, but not too close, as if aware of the line between them. "How is he?" she asked. "He needs heart surgery," Jack said. "Soon. It will cost more than I make in a year." Charlotte's eyes flicked to the paper in his hand. She did not ask to see it. "I talked to the hospital administrator on my way here," she said. "Hale Foundation has an existing fund for pediatric cardiac care in this state. It was underused. That is going to change." He stared at her. "You cannot just write a check and fix this," he said. I already did the paperwork, she said. In a way that does not put your name on any donor wall. The foundation will cover Eli's surgery and his follow-up care. As far as the hospital is concerned, he is another kid whose bills ended up in the right pile. I do not want charity, he said. This is not about you, she said, and her voice came out sharper than she intended. She took a breath, softened her tone. This is about a boy with a heart that needs fixing. If you want to argue about pride, we can do that when he is not lying in a hospital bed. He felt the retort rise and then die. His shoulders sagged. He sank back into the plastic chair. She sat in the one beside him, leaving a small gap between them. You had no right to follow us, he said quietly. I had no right to lie to you either, she said, but here we are. He did not answer. They sat in silence for a long stretch. People came and went. A toddler cried in a corner until his mother produced a juice box. A nurse called a name that was not theirs. Why did you come? He asked finally. You could have sent a lawyer, a representative, someone with a card and a form. Because I care about him, she said. Because I was in my office in Chicago and Patrick called and said Eli Mercer is at St. Luke's with a possible cardiac event, and I forgot how to breathe. I have resources. I know people. It would have been obscene not to use that. He looked at her. For the first time since she arrived, he saw the redness at the rims of her eyes, the way her hand twisted once in the fabric of her coat. Do you care about me? He asked. The honesty of the question surprised both of them. Yes, she said. It was not dramatic. It came out almost like a sigh. He nodded once, as if that answer settled something he could not name. A nurse stepped into the doorway then. She held a clipboard, her expression calm. Mr. Mercer, she said, we are ready to take Eli up for more imaging and prep. The surgeon would like to speak with you shortly. Jack rose. Charlotte did too. I will stay, she said, if you want me to. He hesitated, then gave the smallest nod. They walked together down the corridor, the soles of their shoes whispering against the polished floor, the overhead lights casting thin rectangles of brightness as they passed. In the elevator up to the cardiac floor, their shoulders almost touched. The monitor in the corner showed the floors ticking by, one number at a time. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. The hallway beyond was bright and too clean, the kind of clean that smelled like chemicals and cotton. Signs on the wall pointed in different directions. Cardiac step down, pediatric recovery, family lounge. A nurse in blue scrubs waited by a small desk, a tablet in her hand. Eli Mercer, she asked. That is my son, Jack said. This way, she said. We are moving him upstairs so you can be with him before we finalize the plan. They followed her down the hall. Their footsteps echoed softly. Through a doorway, Jack caught a glimpse of other rooms, other small bodies and beds, parents in plastic chairs with faces that all carried some version of the same look. Eli's new room had a window that overlooked the hospital parking lot. The blinds were half open, letting in a gray wash of afternoon light. The bed looked too big for him. He lay in the middle hospital gown bright against his skin. His eyes lifted when they entered. Hey, he said, voice rough. Jack came to the side of the bed and put his hand on the rail. You got the good room, he said. Look at that view. All the cars you could ever want to draw. Eli smiled weakly. Charlotte hung back at the foot of the bed for a moment, then stepped closer. Hi, she said. Hi, Eli replied. You found me. Seems to be a habit of mine, she said. A nurse checked the monitor and the IV line, then left promising that the surgeon would be in soon. Jack pulled the one chair in the room closer and sat down. His knees bumped the side of the bed. Charlotte stayed standing. You did not have to come, Eli said to her. Yes, she answered. I did. You are not mad, he asked. If your heart wanted a little extra attention, this was a dramatic way to ask, she said, but I am not mad. He laughed, a small sound that made a line of pain cross his forehead. The surgeon arrived with Dr. Patel 10 minutes later. She introduced herself as Dr. Reyes, her hair pulled back under a surgical cap that had tiny planets printed on it. I am the one who will be fixing the plumbing, she said, her tone matter of fact. Dr. Patel will be with me. We will be a whole team in there. She showed them a diagram on a tablet, a simple drawing of a heart with one line circled in red. This part here did not close the way it should have when Eli was born, she said. So his heart has been working harder than it needs to. We are going to go and repair that opening and make sure everything flows the way it should. What are the chances? Jack asked. She met his eyes. She did not sugarcoat it. There are always risks, she said. This is serious surgery, but Eli is strong and we have done this many times. I would not recommend it if I did not think it would help him live the life he is meant to live. Are you the best? Eli asked, surprising everyone. Dr. Reyes smiled at him. I am one of the best, she said, and I brought my other best with me. She nodded toward Dr. Patel. We will take good care of you, Dr. Patel said. They went over consent forms. There were words like transfusion and anesthesia and possible complications printed in neat lines. Jack signed where they told him to, his name coming out shaky on the last signature. We will take him down at 7 in the morning, Dr. Reyes said. He should not eat or drink after midnight. She turned to Eli. Your job tonight is to rest, she said, and to think up something cool you want to do when you do not run out of breath so fast anymore. I want to run without feeling weird, he said. That is a good start, she replied. After they left the room, felt bigger and smaller at the same time. Machines hummed softly. The light outside shifted toward evening. A nurse brought an extra blanket and a second chair. She looked at Charlotte and Jack in turn. One of you can stay in here overnight, she said. We will make space. I will, Jack said automatically. Charlotte opened her mouth, then closed it. She nodded. I will be back in the morning, she said. You do not have to sit in a waiting room all night, Jack said. There is nowhere else I can go and sleep, she answered. He did not argue. That night, the hospital grew quieter by degrees. The overhead lights dimmed slightly. Voices in the hallway softened. The beeps from monitors kept their own rhythm. Eli fell asleep sometime after 9, the sedative in his IV making his eyelids too heavy to fight. His hand stayed loosely curled over the edge of the blanket. Jack sat in the chair by the bed, elbows on his knees. The extra blanket lay across his lap. He did not feel the cold. Charlotte sat on the windowsill, knees drawn up her back against the wall. She watched the parking lot fill with darkness, the occasional pair of headlights cutting across it. I used to think hospitals were where you went to get fixed, she said quietly. Jack looked up. I remember visiting my grandfather when I was little, she went on. It smelled like this, chemical and lemon. Everyone spoke softly like they were in church. They fixed his hip. Then later they could not fix anything. He just got smaller. I did not like that part. No one likes that part, Jack said. Do you sleep, she asked. In general, he said. Tonight, she said. I will sit here until someone tells me to move, he said. She slid off the windowsill and moved closer. Trade spots for a while, she said. You will be no good to him if you cannot stand up tomorrow. He hesitated, then switched. He lay down on the thin fold-out cot the nurse had brought and stared at the ceiling tiles. From this angle, the fluorescent light above the bed looked harsher. Charlotte took the chair. She folded her coat over her lap and leaned forward, her hands resting on the edge of the mattress near Eli's fingers. Why did you not call me? She asked after a while. You do not get to be mad about that, he said. I am not mad, she said. I am just trying to understand if it was stubbornness or something else. A bit of everything, he said. I did not want to be the guy who comes running to the rich woman when things go bad. You are the guy whose son needed a surgeon, she said. He did not respond. I kept tabs, you know, she said, on Cedar Falls, then on Riverbend. I asked Patrick to set up alerts, admissions accidents. Not because I wanted to control you, because I wanted to know you were still on the planet. That sounds like control, he said. It sounds like worry, she said. Maybe I do not know the difference yet. He shifted the cot, squeaking under his weight. I wanted to be able to say I did it on my own, he said, that I got him through this without needing anyone. You got him this far, she said. No one is taking that away. Let someone else hold the wrench for a minute. He closed his eyes. The image of an engine with one part slightly wrong flashed behind them. All the hours he had spent bent over machines, finding the one tiny thing out of place. All the times he had said to customers, you could not have fixed this by yourself. It is not built for one person. I hate that this is out of my hands, he admitted. I know, she said. He almost asked how she knew, but the answer was obvious. Her whole life had been about control, assets, images, narratives. Now she was here in a place where none of that meant anything if a heart on a monitor decided to misbehave. He fell asleep for a while, slipping in and out of restless dreams, where hospital corridors led into his garage, where tools hung from IV poles and engines beeped like monitors. He woke to find the light outside the window lighter a pale hint of dawn. His neck ached. The blanket had slipped to the floor. Charlotte still sat in the chair. Her head was tipped back against the wall, eyes closed, but she was not fully gone. Her hand rested near Eli's fingers, almost touching. A nurse came in at 6 to check vitals and start the process of prepping Eli. She moved quietly, efficient. By 7, orderlies had arrived with a gurney. Dr. Reyes appeared again, this time with her surgical cap already in place. Morning, Eli, she said. You ready to take a little nap and let us do our thing? I am not tired, he said. You will be, she replied. She explained again for his benefit what would happen. The trip down the elevator, the mask, the counting backwards. She put it in simple words, but she did not talk down to him. Can my dad come? He asked. Right up to the 2 doors that say stop, she said. Then it is my turn. When you wake up, he will be there. And her, he jerked his chin toward Charlotte. If she behaves, Dr. Reyes said. Eli smiled a little at that. They walked beside the gurney as far as they were allowed. The corridor to the operating suites was colder, the air heavier with disinfectant. At the double doors, a line of tape on the floor marked the last point family could cross. Jack leaned over and pressed his hand gently to Eli's hair. I will be right here, he said. Eli nodded, eyes wide. Charlotte bent close and placed something small in his palm. It was the wooden pencil that had started all of this, its paint-worn eraser gone. Take this for luck, she said. They will probably take it away when you are asleep, but you will know you had it. He closed his fingers around it. Do not lose it, he said. I will not, she replied, and realized she was answering a much larger question. Then they watched as the doors opened and the gurney rolled through. For a second, Eli's face was visible, then the doors swung shut with a slight hiss. They were sent to the surgical waiting room, where the chairs were a little softer, and the walls had paintings of landscapes that tried to be calming. A board on the wall tracked surgeries with numbers instead of names. Someone explained that they would get updates as the case progressed. Jack sat with his elbows on his knees, hands clasped. Charlotte sat beside him, posture too straight. He stared at the floor for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded like it belonged to someone who had not slept. When Sarah was sick, he said, there was a point where I knew I could not fix it. All the tools I had were useless. All the long nights. I kept thinking there had to be some angle I had not tried. Charlotte listened, eyes on the blank television mounted in the corner. What happened? She asked. She died, he said. Eventually, that was the end of it. He had never said it that plainly before out loud to anyone who was not a doctor or a funeral director. He let the words sit in the space between them. This is not the same, she said, choosing each word. This is awful and scary, but it is not the same. You do not know that, he said. No, she agreed. I do not. I know that this time there is a clear broken thing, and a person whose job is to fix it. That is more than I have seen some days. Hours stretched. Nurses came in with updates. First that he was under anesthesia, then that they had started the repair, then that things were proceeding as expected. Each time Jack felt his chest tighten, then loosen. Each time Charlotte's fingers closed a fraction tighter around the arm of her chair. At one point she stood and paced the room, a small rectangle worn into the carpet. She took her phone out, twice stared at it, and put it back without unlocking it. Her world existed inside that glass rectangle, waiting with questions and demands. For once she let it wait. At some point Mrs. Flores appeared in the doorway, still in her school clothes. She approached them nervously. I can come back later, she said. I just wanted to check in. You do not have to stand in another hospital waiting room, on account of us, Jack said. I was the one who told him to sit when he said he felt dizzy, she said. I would like to know he is all right. He likes your class, Charlotte said. Mrs. Flores looked at her, unsure for a second about this new woman in the picture. You are family? She asked. Charlotte opened her mouth, closed it. Jack answered instead. She is our friend, he said. The word did not cover all of it, but it was the one he chose. Mrs. Flores sat for a bit, then went back to the school. She left a note on the small table in the corner, a folded piece of paper that just said in looping handwriting, Tell Eli I said to draw the best scar ever. 4.5 hours after they had walked to the double doors, Dr. Reyes came into the waiting room. She had changed into a clean set of scrubs, her hair still tucked under the same planet cap. There was a faint line from a surgical mask on her cheeks. Both of them were on their feet before she crossed the threshold. He did well, she said. The air seemed to rush out of the room. Jack grabbed the back of his chair to steady himself. We repaired the defect, she went on. His heart responded the way we hoped. We are moving him to recovery then to the pediatric ICU for monitoring overnight. He will look a little rough at first. There are tubes machines. That is normal. The next 24 hours matter, but this is where we wanted to be at this point. Jack nodded, unable to form his gratitude into words. You can see him in about an hour, she said, one at a time at first. When she left, he turned blindly toward Charlotte. She stepped into him, without thinking, her hand landing on his shoulder, then around his back. For a second, his forehead rested against her temple. He pulled back quickly, but the contact had been there. Thank you, he said. You do not owe me thanks, she answered. Thank her. Thank him. You are the one who got him here. The first time he saw Eli in the ICU, it took everything he had not to flinch. Eli lay propped up slightly, a tube at his nose, bandages on his chest lines, running from his arms to bags and pumps. The monitor above his bed beeped in a steady rhythm, numbers marching in green and blue. Eli's eyes opened as Jack approached. "Hey," Jack said, keeping his voice light. "Did they do it?" Eli asked, his voice a rasp. "They did," Jack said. "You have a brand new improved model now?" "It hurts," Eli whispered. "I know, Bud," Jack said. "That means they were in there doing their job." "It feels like a truck is on my chest," Eli said. "Next week it will feel like a car," Jack said. "Week after that, maybe just a bike." Eli gave a tiny laugh that turned into a wince. "You can complain as much as you want," Jack said. "They said it helps." They sat like that for a while. When the nurse nodded from the doorway, Jack made himself step aside to let Charlotte take his place. She approached the bed more slowly. The machines did not scare her exactly. She had seen enough of them over the years in hospital wings with donor plaques her family name paid for. This was different. There was no glass wall between her and the patient now. Eli watched her eyes heavy. "You still have your heart?" she asked softly. "I think so," he said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the wooden pencil, now sealed in a small plastic hospital bag. "They stole this from you when you went into surgery," she said. "I stole it back." He smiled just a little. "Can I keep it here?" he asked. "There is a rule about no outside items on the bed," she said, "but we can keep it close." She placed the bag on the shelf beside him, next to a plastic pitcher of water and a call button. "You scared me," she said. "You scared me first," he answered. "Fair," she said. She sat with him until his eyes drifted closed again. Over the next few days, life shrank to the size of the hospital. Mornings were rounds and vitals and doctors explaining numbers. Afternoons were naps and slow walks down the hall with an IV pole. Evenings were cartoons on the small television mounted to the wall. Charlotte made herself part of the routine without taking over. She brought coffee that did not taste like the cafeterias. She brought sketchbooks that were smaller and lighter, easier for Eli to hold. She emailed her assistant from the corner of the room, sending instructions that shifted meetings, delegated responsibilities, and in one case canceled a gala she had decided she could live without. Jack watched her juggle both worlds, the one where her name opened doors and the one where the only door that mattered was the one to Eli's room. One afternoon when Eli had finally fallen asleep without medication, they sat near the window. The sky outside was a pale blue, the sun reflecting off patches of snow on the roof of a neighboring building. "Do they know where you are?" Jack asked. "The board," she said. "My father." "All of them," he said. "They know enough," she said. "Patrick told them I was with family." "We are not your family," he said. She took that in without flinching. "You are not my blood," she said. "You feel closer than some of the people who are." He looked at her, then away. "How long can you stay?" he asked. "As long as you want me here," she said. "That is not an answer," he said. "It is the only honest one I have," she replied. "Bibom," she replied. On the day the doctors decided Eli could leave the ICU for a regular room, the nurse removed one of the IV lines and a few of the sensors. "You are getting lighter," she told him. "Soon we will not know you are here at all." Eli's room on the regular floor had more light and fewer machines. Jack opened the blinds wider, letting the afternoon sun spill across the foot of the bed. The light caught on the plastic bag holding the wooden pencil, making a faint reflection on the wall. Mrs. Flores visited again this time with a small box of colored pencils and a note from the class. It was filled with drawn hearts and crooked words that said things like, "Get well soon, and we miss you," in bright crayon colors. "You are popular," Charlotte said, as Zambisarisi said. "I am the weird kid from another state," he replied. "They are curious." "You are the artist from another state," she said. That night, with discharge in sight, the room felt different, less like a place you pass through and more like one you are about to leave. Eli sat up in bed, his face still pale, but his eyes clearer. "What happens now?" he asked. Jack sat on the edge of the bed. Charlotte stood near the window. "You go home," Jack said. "You get stronger. You keep drawing." And her Eli asked, nodding toward Charlotte. "She goes back to Chicago," Jack said. It was the first time he had said it out loud. Charlotte held his gaze. "That is the plan," she said. Eli frowned slightly. "Are you going to stop talking?" he asked. "That depends," Jack said. "On what?" Eli asked. "On whether we can do it without lying," Jack said. Eli looked at him, then at her. "Lying is when you say something that is not true," he said. "Sometimes it is also when you do not say something," Charlotte said quietly, "or when you run away instead of telling the truth." "Like when you left Cedar Falls," he said. "Yes," she said. "And when we left Cedar Falls without telling you," Jack added. Eli thought about that. His fingers traced the edge of the blanket. "If you both still care," he said slowly, and you both leave again without saying anything that is also lying." The room went quiet. Charlotte's eyes filled, and she blinked quickly, not wanting him to see. "Out of all the doctors and consultants I know," she said, "I do not think any of them explain things as well as you just did." Jack rubbed a hand over his face. "I do not know how to do this," he admitted. "Any of it." "Neither do I," she said. Eli sighed. "You do it one day at a time," he said. "That is what Mrs. Flores says about big projects. You do not draw the whole thing in one line. You do it one line, then another, and you do not quit in the middle, because that looks weird." Jack and Charlotte looked at each other over his head. "Maybe we could try that," Jack said. "You will go back to Chicago," he added, turning fully to her. "I will not ask you to stay here. This is not your town. It is not your world." "Your world is where he is," she said, glancing at Eli. "That is enough of a reason to pass through sometimes." "You come when you can," he said. "You call when you cannot. No disappearing without a word. No showing up with new names. No pretending I am someone who just happened to drive through town," she said. He nodded. "If you want to help with his care or his art or anything else, we talk about it first," he said. "We decide together what is too much." "Agreed," she said. They held the moment there, awkward but real. "So we are not pretending anymore," Eli said. Stolmable said. "No," Charlotte said. "We are done with that." "Good," he said. "Pretending takes too much energy." 2 days later, a nurse wheeled Eli out through the automatic doors of St. Luke's in a chair that felt unnecessary to him but non-negotiable to them. His sweatshirt bulged a little at the chest where bandages lay underneath. The air outside was cold and full of car exhaust and something that tasted like freedom. Jack walked on one side, hospital bag slung over his shoulder. Charlotte walked on the other, her hand lightly on the back of the wheelchair. They reached the curb. Jack turned to her. "You want to ride with us?" he asked. "I have a rental," she said, jerking her head toward the row of cars. "But I can follow." He nodded. They loaded Eli gently into the truck. He settled against the seat, eyes half closed. "Feels weird to be in a car again," he murmured. "That is because the last ride was bumpy," Charlotte said. She closed the door and watched as Jack drove out of the lot, then went to her own car. Traffic flowed slowly through Riverbend. The truck led and she followed a few lengths behind, watching the familiar shape of the pickup with its dented bumper and rust along the wheel well. When they reached the apartment above the deli, Jack parked in the spot out front. Charlotte pulled in behind him. The deli owner, a man named Marco with kind eyes, stuck his head out the door as they maneuvered Eli carefully up the stairs. "You made it," he said. "I told my mother to make soup. Good for the heart." "Thank you," Jack said. Inside the apartment, everything looked the same as when they had left. A blanket still lay tossed over the back of the couch. A mug sat in the sink. On Eli's desk, the box of pencils waited where he had left it, lid closed. He walked straight to it, moving slower than usual, but without help. He opened the lid and ran his fingers over the neat row. "They waited," he said. "They are not going anywhere," Charlotte replied. She stood in the doorway of his room, watching as he picked up the old wooden pencil and held it up to the light. The afternoon sun streaming in through the window caught on the worn paint, making it shine briefly. In the living room, Jack opened the blinds all the way. Light spilled across the floor, across the couch, across the small table where his keys lay, the little wrench on his keychain glinting. He turned back toward Charlotte. "You stay in the night?" he asked. "If that is all right," she said. "I can sleep on the couch. I have had worse." "We have blankets," he said. "Tomorrow I need to go back," she added. "There are fires waiting, some literal, some just dramatic." He nodded. "Then tomorrow you go," he said, "and you call." "And I come back when I can," she said. They stood there for a moment, the sounds of the deli drifting up through the floor, the faint smell of soup in the air. In his room, Eli sat at his desk, hand moving slowly over a new page. The drawing was rough, at first lines hesitant, but it began to settle into something familiar. A tree tall and solid, figures underneath it. This time he did not erase anyone. Charlotte left 2 mornings later as she had said she would. The sun was just starting to lift over the low buildings of Riverbend when she carried her bag down the narrow stairs from the apartment. The deli downstairs rattled with early prep, the clatter of pans and the smell of onions hitting hot oil. Jack stood by her rental, arms folded loosely. Eli sat on the bottom step, sweatshirt zipped up, one hand tucked into the pocket where the wooden pencil rested. "You have your follow-up appointment in 3 weeks, Charlotte said. "Dr. Patel wants blood work and imaging. I already talked to the scheduler." "You talked to the scheduler," Jack repeated. She was delighted to have someone who knew what box to check, Charlotte said. He tried not to smile, failed a little. "I will take him," he said. "You do not have to call ahead every time we step into a building." I know, she replied. I wanted to. Eli came to stand between them. You will call, he asked her. Every Sunday, she said. Unless you get tired of me, then every other Sunday? Sunday is fine, he said. She hesitated, then pulled him carefully into a hug, mindful of his chest. He pressed his forehead against her shoulder for a second. Draw something weird, she said near his ear. Send me a picture. He nodded. She let him go and turned to Jack. For a second it seemed like she might hold out her hand in some kind of formal farewell. Instead, she tucked her hands into her coat pockets. I will see you, she said. Yeah, he answered. They looked at each other. There was a lot that could have fit into that space. Apologies already given. Thanks not yet spoken. Questions better left alone for now. She opened the car door and slid in. The engine started with a quiet hum. She pulled away from the curb and merged into the light traffic, the car shrinking in the side mirror until it was just another shape on the road. Jack and Eli watched until the taillights disappeared around the corner. You think she will come back? Eli asked. Jack looked down at his son, at the scar hidden under his sweatshirt. She said she would, he said. We will see. Eli seemed to accept that. He turned and trudged back up the stairs, one hand trailing along the rail. Jack stood for a moment longer on the sidewalk, then followed. The weeks after her departure had a different texture than the silence that had followed Charlotte's first leaving. This time, the absence had lines drawn around it, edges marked by phone calls and emails that came when she said they would. On Sundays, the old laptop on the kitchen table became a window. The video call tone chirped, and then there she was, framed by different backgrounds. Sometimes she sat in her Chicago office tall windows, behind her showing a strip of sky and the tops of other buildings. Sometimes she was in her apartment, the walls bare in a way that suggested both money and a lack of time. Once she called from a taxi, city lights stuttering past the windows as she held the phone steady. Show me what you drew, she would say. Eli held up sketchbooks. The camera struggled to catch every line, but she leaned in, eyes narrowing, asking questions about shading and composition, as if she could see every detail. You are using the soft pencils more, she noted once. I can tell. The values are richer. I like them, he said. They make better darks. Save your H for when you are mad, she told him. Hard pencils are for scratching. Jack sat off to the side those Sundays, pretending to read the paper or scroll his phone. He listened, without looking like he was listening. Sometimes she asked him things too. How is work, she would say. Busy, he answered. You sleeping, she asked. Some, he replied. It was awkward, but in a quiet way. Not the painful stiffness of strangers, more like two people learning a language they had not expected to need. Spring came to Riverbend slowly. The river swelled with snowmelt running higher and faster under the bridge. Trees along the sidewalks budded and then burst into green. The deli put a small table outside, two mismatched chairs for people who wanted to drink coffee in the thin sun. Jack settled into the rhythm at Riverbend Auto Care. Gus turned out to be fair and stubborn, a combination Jack could work with. They argued about parts and methods, then shared sandwiches at lunch, the arguments already finished. You know what you were doing, Gus said one afternoon, nodding toward a sedan Jack had coaxed back from the brink. You want this place someday? Jack snorted. I have a kid with a heart like a slow engine, he said. I am not signing anything until I see how far he wants to go. You bring him by, Gus said. We will let him draw the waiting room. At school, Eli moved from curiosity to fact. Kids stopped asking where he came from and started asking if he could draw their dogs. Mrs. Flores sent home a note about an art camp in the city. There was a scholarship attached. Charlotte forwarded the email before Jack even saw the paper, a short line above it. Look this over. I like the portfolio requirements. They will like him. The foundation covered the fees quietly. Jack filled out the forms himself, his handwriting careful in the spaces. By summer, the scar on Eli's chest had faded from angry red to a softer pink. He grew taller, his face thinning out, baby roundness giving way to something more defined. He still grew winded now and then, but there was a new ease to the way he climbed stairs, as if each step was less of an argument with his own body. One June afternoon, he ran half the length of the park, then skidded to a stop under a tree. Did you see? He called back to Jack. I saw, Jack said, feeling something tight loosen inside him. Nurses at St. Luke's knew them by name by then, but the visits were checkups, not crises. Dr. Patel pointed at charts and smiled more. The word normal appeared more often in his explanations. In Chicago, Charlotte's days did not suddenly become easier, but they shifted. She still sat through meetings about acquisitions and donors. She still signed off on exhibitions. She still attended dinners where the conversation circled money and taste. Something in the center of her had moved. She began funneling more of the foundation's budget into programs that did not come with photo ops. Rural arts grants, hospital funds that did not put names on wings. She created a line item labeled Quiet Projects in the internal documents, a place for the things that mattered without needing to be seen. Her father noticed. "You are bleeding money into small towns," he said one afternoon, waving a report. "There is no return on this, no press, no naming rights." "You taught me how to read numbers," she replied. "The return is not always on paper." He stared at her for a long moment. "You sound like your mother," he said at last. She chose to take that as a compliment. She visited Riverbend when she could never unannounced. There were no more surprise knocks at garage doors, no more new names. She called ahead, checked their schedules, made sure they actually wanted her there. Sometimes she came for a weekend, arriving Friday night and leaving Sunday afternoon. She stayed at a small hotel on the other side of the river, the kind with plain carpets and decent coffee. She spent her days in their apartment or at the shop or in the park, sitting on the grass with Eli while he drew. The town learned her face slowly. To most, she was just Jack's friend from the city. Someone said she worked in art. Someone else said they had seen her name in a magazine once, but could not quite place it. At Riverbend Auto Care, she would stop by with sandwiches or coffee. "You sure you are not a food delivery driver?" Gus asked her once. "I have too many performance reviews at my other job," she replied. He shrugged and took the sandwich. On one visit, she walked into the garage to find a new addition. A section of wall near the small office had been cleared. Frames hung there, 5 of them in a row. Inside were Eli's drawings. One was of the oak tree at the Cedar Falls house, branches stark against the sky. One was of the Chicago skyline, seen from ground level, the buildings looming but softened at the edges. One was of Riverbend's Main Street, the deli sign crooked and perfect. One was a close study of a pair of hands grease-staining the skin. The last was an abstract piece. Swirls of dark and light that hinted at movement, at breath, at the echo of a heartbeat caught on paper. "What is this?" she asked. "Customers kept asking why he did not sell any," Jack said. "I told them his work was not for sale, but I figured we could at least put some up where people could see." "There is a tip jar. He calls it a patron jar." Eli flushed a little. "I did not want to sell them," he said, "but I do not mind if people say they like them." There were a few bills in the jar, nothing life-changing, enough to feel like a kind of vote. "Looks like people do," Charlotte said. Mrs. Flores stopped in that day too, on her way home from school. She stood in front of the wall for a long minute, tilting her head. "He is ready for more," she said to Charlotte quietly. "More?" what Charlotte asked. "More challenge," Mrs. Flores said. "More eyes on the work. There is a man at the community center who runs workshops. I have been trying to get funding for years. He could help." "Send me a proposal," Charlotte said. Mrs. Flores looked at her half amused. "You talk like a person who signs off on these things," she said. "Sometimes I do," Charlotte replied. Fall dropped over Riverbend in a rush that year. One week the trees were green. The next they were on fire. Reds and golds lined the riverbank, leaves piled in drifts against the curbs. On an afternoon in October, Charlotte's car pulled into the parking lot behind Riverbend Auto Care. She stepped out into crisp air, the kind that made her lungs feel bigger. She had called ahead. Eli had been counting days on a calendar. He met her at the door before she even reached the front. "You are late," he said. "You keep saying that," she replied. He wore a jacket, now his shoulders broader. The scar under his shirt had faded more. His eyes looked clearer than they had the first time she saw him sketching in the corner of the garage. Jack emerged from under a truck, wiping his hands on a rag. "You made it," he said. "I almost stopped for pie," she said. "Then I decided you would be offended if I ate before dinner." "You decided right," he said. They spent that afternoon at the park by the river. The trees along the water had dropped enough leaves to cover the ground. Eli walked a path of his own, collecting the most interesting ones, holding them up to the light, to examine their veins before adding them to a small pile at his feet. "Draw them like people," Charlotte told him. "They have personality." "They just fall," he said. "So do people," she answered. Jack sat on a bench nearby, watching them. He felt the familiar tug in his chest that he had learned to stop fighting. The sight of his son laughing, chatting, arguing over whether a leaf looked more like a hand or a boat. The woman who had once been a stranger in a broken car, now sitting cross-legged in the grass sketchbook, open on her knees. In a quieter moment, when Eli ran to the edge of the path to look at the river, Charlotte shifted to the bench beside Jack. "How is Chicago?" he asked. "Loud," she said. "Busy, predictable in its own unpredictable way." "You still funding small-town art projects?" he asked. "More than they know," she said. He nodded. "They appreciate it," he said. "I appreciate having somewhere to send the money where it does not end up as a metal plaque," she said. They sat in companionable silence for a bit. You could move here, he said, then immediately shook his head. No, that is not fair. It is not practical, she said. My work is there, the foundation is there, the board, my father. Your life, he said. Part of it, she replied. She hesitated, then went on. I thought about it, she admitted, more than once. Selling the penthouse, buying a place here, opening a little gallery no one would walk into because they would be afraid the art was too expensive. He smiled. Sounds like a waste of good paintings, he said. That is what I decided, she said. So, I stay there, I come here, I live in both. For now, it works as long as we keep talking about it. He looked at her. You good with that? He asked. She thought about it. About the flights and the drives. About the board meetings. About the park bench she was sitting on and the boy by the river. I am good with choosing it, she said, even when it is not simple. He was quiet for a moment. People keep asking what you are to us, he said. Neighbor, friend, sponsor, fairy godmother. I do not have an answer that fits on a form. You do not have to, she replied. So maybe it's seed. He nodded. You know I am not going anywhere, he said. Except maybe from one garage to another if Gus ever retires and I lose my mind and buy the place. She smiled. I would invest in that, she said. I figured, he replied. When the sun dropped lower and the air cooled further, they walked back to the apartment. Eli carried his pile of leaves carefully, as if the shapes might crumble if he moved too fast. That night, after dinner at the deli downstairs, they sat around the small table in the apartment. The lights were warm. The windows reflected their faces back at them. Eli spread his leaves on the table and started to sketch them, arranging them into a pattern that only he could see at first. Charlotte watched occasionally, pointing out a line he had missed or a shadow that needed depth. Jack leaned back in his chair, letting the sounds wash over him. Pencil on paper, chairs scraping, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the city outside muted by glass. Later, after Eli had gone to bed, they ended up in the narrow kitchen, 2 mugs between them. This time the coffee was decent. Charlotte had insisted on buying a better brand, claiming she could not think clearly on the cheap stuff. You remember that first spaghetti dinner in Cedar Falls, she asked. I remember you pretending you did not know how to use a fork, he said. I knew, she said. I did not know how to sit at a table where no one wanted anything from me. He considered that. That is still true here, he asked. She looked at him. You and Eli want things, she said. You want me to show up when I say I will. You want me not to lie. You want me not to forget that you are not a project. I can live with that, he said. Her hand drifted across the table. His did too. Their fingers brushed. Neither of them pulled away. The contact was small, almost nothing, yet it settled something that had been hovering just out of reach. He squeezed her hand once, then let it go. She slept on the couch that night as she always did. In the morning she left again as she always would for now. Winter came back around. The river edged with ice. Snow fell in thick, slow flakes that turned the street outside the deli into something softer. One February morning, Jack opened the garage for the day and found an envelope slipped under the door. It was heavier than a bill, the paper smooth and thick. His name was written on the front in a handwriting he recognized. Elegant, a little, slanted with the slightest hesitations, where she still had to remember to write Mercer instead of Hale. He carried it inside and opened it at his workbench. Inside was a single sheet of paper, cream-colored, the same careful hand across it. Some things do not need a label to be real. Thank you for letting me belong without a script or a costume. I will keep choosing both of you as often as I am allowed in all the small ways that count. See? He read it twice, then folded it neatly and slipped it into his wallet, behind the note from the school nurse and the crumpled paper with scholarship names. It joined the little stack of things that had changed the shape of his days. That afternoon, when he came back upstairs for lunch, Eli was at the table with a fresh sheet of paper in front of him. The drawing was almost finished. A tree stood in the center, its trunk solid, branches spreading wide. Under it were 3 figures. They were not touching, but they were close, feet planted on the same ground. Fine pencil lines, almost invisible, connected their hands in a loose triangle. You drew us, Jack said. Eli nodded. The way we are, replied. Jack looked at the drawing again, at the space between each figure, at the way the light fell through the branches catching on their shoulders. Outside, snow started to fall gentle and thick. It drifted past the window and settled on the cars parked along the street, softening their outlines. In the garage below, an engine waited with its hood up, its inner workings exposed. In Eli's room, the old wooden pencil sat in its jar next to newer ones, all of them ready for whatever came next on the blank pages stacked nearby. Spring came around again before anyone realized how much time had passed. The river ran high with meltwater. Trees along the sidewalks in Riverbend fuzzed green at the tips. The deli shifted from soups to sandwiches that dripped tomato and vinegar onto wax paper. On a Saturday morning, the apartment above the deli looked like a storm had gone through it. Sketchbooks were stacked in lopsided piles. Sheets of loose paper leaned against the walls. A roll of tape sat half unwound on the table, next to a stack of simple black frames. "Careful," Jack said, holding a frame, while Eli slid a drawing into place. "You bend it, you frame it with the bend." "I know," Eli said. "I am not going to break my own work." His hands moved more confidently now. There was still a faint scar on his chest under his t-shirt, but his arms were steady. Jack pressed the back of the frame into place until it clicked. "There," he said, "gallery ready." Eli set it against the wall with the others. On the floor around them were 10 framed pieces, the ones he had chosen after much arguing with himself and with Mrs. Flores. "Last chance to change your mind," Jack said. "You can still decide you hate all of these and want to show pictures of trucks instead." "These are better," Eli said. He knelt in front of them. His fingers brushed the edge of one frame. It held the drawing of the 3 figures under the tree, the one with the fine lines connecting their hands. "This one goes in the middle," he said, "not for sale." "Already told them that," Jack said. The community center lady wrote it down in capital letters. Eli nodded. His cheeks were flushed eyes, bright. Nerves showed in the way he shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "You are allowed to be nervous," Jack said. "I am not nervous," Eli said. His voice cracked just enough to make them both smile. Charlotte arrived an hour later. She climbed the stairs with a paper bag in one hand and her hair pulled back in a loose knot. The smell of coffee and something sweet came with her. "You look like a tornado season," she said, stepping into the apartment and taking in the chaos. "In a good way." "This is organized," Eli said. "We know where everything is." "Of course you do," she said. She lifted the bag. Bribery from a bakery that pretends it lives in Paris. Inside were 3 pastries with glossy tops and delicate layers. "I did not know what the pre-exhibit ritual was," she said, "so I invented one." "Eating is a good ritual," Jack said. They stood around the table biting into flaky layers that scattered crumbs everywhere. Sugar helped settle something jittery in the air. "You ready?" Charlotte asked Ida. "Almost," he said. "I have to pick which pencil to take." She lifted an eyebrow. "You get to use pens there too," she said. "It is a real venue." "I know," he said. "Still." He went to his room and opened the jar on his desk. The old wooden pencil sat inside along with newer ones, their points sharp. He picked up the old one and rolled it between his fingers. The paint had worn down, but the weight of it felt right. He slid it into his pocket. The Riverbend Community Arts Center used to be a warehouse. Someone had painted the outside a soft blue and strung lights along the roofline. Inside, the concrete floors were polished and dotted with scuffs, where easels and chairs had been dragged. For the youth exhibit, the main room held rows of movable walls covered in white fabric. Artwork already hung along the panel's name tags below each piece written in careful print. People milled around their footsteps, echoing. There was the murmur of conversation, the occasional high laugh. Near the entrance, a folding table held juice in a big glass dispenser, stacks of paper cups, and a plate of cookies Mrs. Flores had baked. "You made it," she said when she saw them. Her hands had traces of pastel dust on them as usual. "You did this," Jack said, looking around. "I complained for 10 years, she said. Your friend from Chicago complained in the right direction. The board suddenly found money in a drawer." There was a quiet nod toward Charlotte at that. Charlotte dipped her head once, accepting it without comment. Eli's section of the exhibit was at the far end of the room. 5 of his pieces hung together on one panel, 3 more on the one beside it. A small card with his name and age sat between them. He stopped a few feet away, taking it in. "It looks different when it is not on the fridge," he said. "It looks like it belongs here," Mrs. Flores said. People drifted over, drawn by the tree piece or the study of hands or the city skyline. They leaned in close, then leaned back, looking from different angles. Some read his name out loud, some did not. One older man in a tweed jacket that had seen better days stood in front of the abstract, drawing the one with the swirls of light and dark. "What were you thinking about when you made this?" he asked. Eli swallowed. "My chest," he said. "After the hospital, how it felt when I could breathe and it was still weird." The man nodded slowly, eyes still on the paper. "It looks like that," he said. He moved his attention to the piece with the 3 figures under the tree. "This one for sale?" he asked. "No," Eli and Jack said at the same time. The man laughed. "Good," he said. "Some things are supposed to stay with the people they started with." Charlotte watched from a step back, not inserting herself into the conversations. She saw the way people's faces changed as they looked. small shifts in their eyes and mouths that meant something had landed. At one point, a local reporter showed up with a camera. She spoke to the event organizer, then to Mrs. Flores, then asked Eli if she could take his picture. "Only if my dad is in it," he said. They posed under his work, the tree rising above their shoulders. Charlotte stayed out of the frame. The flash went off with a soft pop. The reporter scribbled notes. "Spell your last name for me," she said. He did. She wrote it down carefully. There were other kids there too, other parents and guardians. Paintings of cats and basketball games and self-portraits lined the walls. The room buzzed with energy that felt loose and proud. In a corner of the room, on a small table, there was a donation box with a sign. "Support young artists," it read. Funds raised would go to supplies and future exhibits. Charlotte slid a folded check into the slot when no one was looking. The amount was more than the box would ever collect in cash, but not enough to cause questions at the bank. She did not sign it with her own name. The foundation had a sub-account for exactly this. Later, when the organizers discovered it, they would argue about who had given it. They would never quite figure it out. As the afternoon thinned, the crowd shifted from full to light. Some people left with programs folded in their hands. Others lingered talking about brushstrokes and shading and which kid was someone to watch. Near the end, the man in tweed came back. He waited until there was a clear space around the abstract chest drawing. "I would like to buy this one," he said to Jack. Eli's head snapped up. "It is for sale," Jack said slowly. He looked at his son. "It is your decision," he added. "You do not owe anyone a yes." Eli stared at the drawing. His fingers tapped the side of his leg. "I can make another one," he said. "Not the same, but another." He took a breath. "Okay," he said to the man. "You can have it." The man smiled, small and pleased. "I do not want to make you sad," he said. "It is a good kind of sad," Eli said. They worked out a price with Mrs. Flores' help. It was more than Eli had ever held at once, less than the man would have paid in a city gallery. It felt right in the middle. When the man left, carrying the framed drawing carefully, Eli stood staring at the empty space on the wall. Charlotte moved to his side. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like a part of me is on someone else's wall now," he said. "That is not a bad thing," she said. "It means your inside is bigger than your outside can hold." He considered that. "I kept the tree one," he said. "I saw," she answered. They walked home as the light softened. Jack carried the stack of empty frames and the few pieces that had not been hung. Eli held his envelope of money tight in one hand. Charlotte walked between them empty-handed and somehow still full. That evening back at the apartment, Eli spread his earnings out on the table. "I am rich," he said. "You are not that rich," Jack said. "It is a start," Charlotte said. He looked at the bills, then at the box of pencils on his desk. "I want to buy something," he said. "For the garage, for the wall." "Your work is already there," Jack said. "Something else," he replied. The next day they went to a print shop near the college. Eli spent nearly an hour flipping through options, eyes narrowed, jaw working as he considered. He finally chose a simple metal plaque small with room for only a few lines. He wrote the words carefully on the order form. The plaque came back a week later. They picked it up and carried it carefully to the shop. Jack drilled the holes in the wall himself. The gallery corner of Riverbend Auto Care had grown. More of Eli's pieces hung there now. Some had small notes under them from customers who had left tips. One was a gift from a kid in his class who had drawn him in return. Jack held the plaque in place. Eli stepped back to see if it was straight. Charlotte watched from a few feet away, hands tucked into the pockets of her coat. "Looks good," Eli said. Jack tightened the screws. The plaque sat squarely above the drawings. The letters were neat and black. Mercer Gallery. Open when the door is... No names, no big explanations, just that. Gus came over at the end of the day, wiping his hands on a rag. "That what you spent your fortune on?" he asked Eli. "Yes," Eli said. "It is official. Osobanosti, it is official now." Gus nodded. "Sounds right," he said. As the months rolled on, the rhythm settled in. Charlotte came and went. Sometimes she stayed a few days, sometimes only long enough for a meal and a walk. Sometimes she arrived by car, sometimes by bus from the city, shoulders relaxed in a way her board members never saw. Jack worked. Eli drew. The scar on his chest became part of the map of his body, something he did not hide but did not point out either. They celebrated small things without ceremony. A good report from Dr. Patel. The first time Eli ran across the park and did not have to stop halfway. The day a stranger walked into the garage, not for an oil change, but to see the drawings on the wall. There were harder days, too. Days when Charlotte could not get away. Days when old fears flared for no reason. Days when Jack and Charlotte argued about money or space or expectations, voices low but edged. None of them ran this time. They stayed in the room. They finished the sentences. One autumn afternoon, almost a year after the exhibit, the three of them found themselves back at the park by the river. The air was crisp, the trees gold. Eli lay on the grass notebook, open above his head pencil, scratching as he drew the branches overhead. Jack sat with his back against the tree. Charlotte stretched out beside him, ankles crossed. "You ever think about that road in Ohio?" she asked quietly. "Sometimes," Jack said. "Me too," she said. He tilted his head to look at her. "Do you wish it had gone different?" he asked. Her eyes tracked a cloud moving slowly across the sky. "There are parts I would change," she said. "Less lying, less crashing. But if we are talking about that one moment, you on the side of the road, me in a car that should have killed me, you carrying me out and walking away, I am glad that part happened." He nodded. "Me too," he said. The sun shifted. Light filtered through the leaves, dappling their faces. Eli sat up and turned his sketch pad around so they could see. On the page, the tree rose tall, its branches reaching off the edge. Under it were three figures again. This time they were not perfectly clear. The lines were a little loose, as if they were in motion. The threads connecting their hands were there, faint but sure. "You keep returning to that," Charlotte said. "It is good practice," he replied. Jack studied the drawing, the way the shadows fell, the way the light hit their shoulders. "It looks like us," he said. "It is us," Eli answered. They sat there a while longer, the three of them under the real tree, the river moving steadily past the edge of the park. Cars crossed the bridge in the distance. Somewhere downtown, the deli owner yelled an order in rapid Italian. In Chicago, a phone probably buzzed on a desk that would remain empty for a few more hours. In the apartment above the deli, on a desk in a small room, a wooden pencil waited in its jar, ready for the next page. The truck's engine worked a little harder than usual on the long stretch of interstate. It was the farthest Jack had taken it in a while. The hood vibrated just enough to suggest complaint, but the sound stayed steady. Eli sat in the passenger seat this time, not in the back. His legs were too long for that now. A sketchbook rested against his thighs, and the city that rose up ahead of them was beginning to take shape on the page in pencil lines. "Those buildings are ridiculous," he said, squinting through the windshield. "They have more floors than we have people on our block," Jack replied. "You think they ever fall over?" Eli asked. "Not while we are here," Jack said. They had left Riverbend before sunrise. The highway unspooled under them, in grays and browns, then slowly picked up color as the sky brightened. Trucks passed their trailers humming. Roadside billboards promised gas fast food fireworks. The closer they got to Chicago, the more the traffic thickened. Lanes widened. Signs rose on tall poles. The skyline gathered itself out of the haze, jagged and crowded glass catching the early light. Eli lifted his pencil and shaded the side of one tower, giving it weight. "You nervous?" Jack asked. "A little," Eli said. "I have never seen one of Charlotte's galleries before." "Me either," Jack said. "You are more nervous than me," Eli added. Eli added. "Probably," Jack said. He kept his eyes on the road as the GPS voice instructed him to merge and keep left. Honks sounded nearby, tempered by the thick air of the city. He swallowed the urge to swear at a car that cut them off and kept his hands steady on the wheel. In another part of the city, Charlotte sat at the end of a long conference table. The boardroom was washed in morning light, the glass walls reflecting the skyline back at itself. Papers lay in neat stacks. Her laptop sat open, a spreadsheet glowing on its screen. Her father finished his point about a new acquisition. Heads around the table nodded or frowned. Numbers were mentioned. Percentages, projected returns, market share. Charlotte listened, then closed her laptop gently. "I have to step out," she said. "You have everything you need to vote. The proposal is clear. You do not need my face for the cameras this time." Her father's gaze landed on her. "Where are you going?" he asked. "I have an appointment," she said. "A prior one." "You are the chair," he reminded her. "Yes," she said. "I am also a person. You can handle this. We have done harder things." She stood before anyone could object. Patrick, seated near the end of the table, lifted his eyes briefly from his notes. There was the hint of a smile there, quickly hidden. In her office, she changed her heels for flats, slipped a small envelope into her bag, and picked up her coat. On her desk near the corner sat a photo in a simple frame. Jack and Eli in the garage, unaware the camera had caught them. Jack's hand rested on the hood of a car. Eli's was mid-gesture, pencil between his fingers. She brushed the edge of the frame with her thumb, then headed for the elevator. Downtown traffic gathered around the truck like a restless school of fish. Jack followed the blue line on the GPS as it guided him through turns he would never have found on his own. "Next right," Eli read off the screen. then straight for 3 blocks. Then we get lost forever. We are not getting lost, Jack said. We are getting temporarily confused. They reached a street lined with old brick buildings and new glass fronts. Cars nestled curb to curb. People walked briskly, shoulders hunched against the cool wind that funneled between structures. There, Eli said, pointing. Kim Debbie, she said, pointing. Hale Project Space was not the grand flagship gallery whose photo appeared in magazines. This one sat between a coffee shop and a store that sold plants in small ceramic pots. The sign above the door was simple. Inside, through the large front window, they could see white walls, clean and bare, waiting. Jack found a parking garage half a block away and eased the truck into a spot that felt too small. Do not scratch anyone, he muttered to the vehicle. They climbed out and walked toward the gallery. The sidewalk felt harder than the one in Riverbend, the noise sharper. Eli's eyes took everything in at once. Charlotte waited at the door, hands in her coat pockets. Her hair was down, wind lifting a few strands. She looked like she belonged there, and also like she had been standing there long enough to be impatient. You found it, she said. We followed the other cars, Jack said. Eli moved forward. She bent down so they were closer to the same height, and pulled him into a quick hug. You ready, she asked. I think so, he said. Are you sure it is okay that my work is here? Yes, she replied. This space is exactly for this. She led them inside. The air in the gallery was cool and smelled faintly of paint and clean floors. Light from the front windows flowed in and spread across the polished concrete. Track lights on the ceiling waited, turned down low for now. On the walls hung pieces from a small group of young artists. Some were older teenagers, some younger. There were cityscapes, portraits, abstract pieces, a painting of a crowded kitchen scene that made Jack hungry just looking at it. Along one wall, spaced neatly, were 3 of Eli's drawings. One was the Chicago skyline, done from a sketch he had made months before and refined later. The angles were precise, but he had softened the reflections in the glass, making the buildings feel less cold. One was a close-up of hands this time, not only Jack's, but his own side by side, fingers slightly overlapped. The third was the tree with 3 figures beneath it, their outlines more defined now, the threads between their hands a little clearer. The background had shifted. The hints of buildings crept in behind the tree as if it had taken root at the edge of a city park. A small card by the wall read, Eli, Mercer Riverbend, Indiana. He did not want a long artist statement, Charlotte said. He wrote his own. It said, I draw what I see and some things I wish I could see. That is enough, Jack said. Eli stood very still in front of his work. It looks taller here, he said. That is because the walls listen more, Charlotte said. A gallery assistant moved quietly around them, adjusting lights, straightening labels. He nodded to Charlotte with the respect of someone who knew exactly who she was and chose not to make a thing of it. You changed the name on the door, Jack said, noticing a small plaque near the entrance that read HPG Youth in simple letters. It is one of the project grants, she said. Annual now. Different kids each year. You are the first round. Guinea pigs, Eli said. Founding class, she corrected. They had a few minutes of quiet before other people arrived. Then the room began to fill. Some visitors were clearly regulars, drifting in with the casual confidence of people who attended openings every week. Others came in bundled up, eyes wide, programs in hand. A woman in a coat that probably cost more than Jack's truck stood in front of a 17-year-old's painting of a bus stop and shook her head in appreciation. A man in a work jacket stopped at Eli's skyline and leaned close. This is how it feels on a cold day, the man said to no one in particular. Eli overheard. His spine straightened a little. Charlotte moved through the room, greeting a few people, deflecting attention. When it tried to settle on her, she introduced Eli simply. This is Eli, she said. He drew that wall. Jack hovered at the edges, more comfortable near doorways and corners than in the center of the room. He listened to snippets of conversation he barely understood. Words like negative space and line weight and emotional resonance floated by. At one point, he found himself standing beside a man in a tailored suit who was studying the tree drawing. The composition is interesting, the man said. That space between them. It is doing something. Kid likes space, Jack said. The man glanced over. You his father? He asked. Yes, Jack answered. He is good, the man said. Not just for his age, just good. Jack let that settle where the old fear usually lived. Thank you, he said. Near the back of the gallery, a small cluster formed around a table, where a few of the young artists stood handling questions about their work. Eli worked his way there reluctantly, then found his footing as people asked him about his lines and how he thought about light. It is like carving, he said at one point. You take away what you do not need, so the shape comes out. Charlotte, hearing the echo of her own words from the garage, felt something warm twist inside her. Later, when the crowd thinned, she spotted her father at the door. He had arrived without fanfare, coat over his arm scarf tucked into his collar. He walked slowly through the room, hands behind his back reading the labels. A few people greeted him. He nodded, but did not linger with them. He paused longer in front of Eli's skyline. "You did not have to come," Charlotte said, stepping beside him. "Apparently it runs in the family," he said. "Not showing up is not an option." He kept his eyes on the drawing. "Is that the view from your office?" he asked. "From the street," she said. "He prefers the ground." "That is obvious," he said. "The buildings do not look like they want to eat you." He moved to the tree piece. His gaze stayed there for a while. "Who are they?" he asked. "People he knows," she said. "Do they know he sees them like that?" he asked. "Yes," she said. He nodded once. "You chose well," he said. "Thank you," she replied. And fiscally, he asked, voice lowering. "This project, it will not sink us. It will not make a dent you will feel," she said. "The spreadsheets say we are safe." "The spreadsheets did not cover this when I started," he said. "You did not have to sign all of them," she answered. He looked at her, then really looked, and something in his expression softened, the way it did when her mother's name came up. "You are different," he said. "I am trying to be," she replied. He glanced across the room at Jack and Eli. Eli was showing his sketchbook to the man in the work jacket. Jack stood nearby, bad posture and proud eyes. "Bring them to dinner," her father said. She blinked. "We are not dressed for your dinners," she said. "Neither am I," he replied. "There is soup and bread. That is fine." She considered it. "I will ask," she said. They ended up at a small restaurant near the river, not one of the gleaming places that made lists. The tables were close together, the lighting soft. The napkins were cloth, but the chairs scraped the floor when people moved. Her father ordered stew. Jack chose a burger. Eli ordered pasta with the seriousness of someone making an important life choice, then folded his hands in his lap. Conversation started stiffly. Her father asked Eli about school. Eli answered politely. He asked Jack about the garage. Jack kept it simple. He asked Charlotte about the board meeting she had walked out of. She answered briefly. Then Eli mentioned the hospital in passing, a reference to a follow-up appointment. The subject opened in a way none of them had planned. "You had heart surgery?" her father asked. "Yes," Eli said. "A good hospital?" he asked. "St. Luke's," Eli said. "They have pictures on the walls that do not totally suck." Her father's mouth quirked. "The pediatric wing?" he asked. "Yes," Eli said. Her father nodded slowly. "Your grandmother would have liked that," he said to Charlotte. "She always said hospitals should be less ugly." "I know," Charlotte said. "I remember." He looked at Eli. "I am glad you are all right," he said. "Me too," Eli replied. The rest of the meal loosened after that. There was talk about favorite foods and least favorite classes. Gus's name came up. So did Mrs. Flores. So did a story about Charlotte as a teenager knocking a sculpture over at a reception and trying to pretend nothing had happened. By the time they stepped back out into the cool evening, some of the edges between them had worn down. They walked to where the truck was parked. The city around them glowed in yellows and whites, the river a dark ribbon cut with reflections. At the curb, her father shook Jack's hand. "Thank you for bringing him," he said, "both of them." Jack nodded. "Thank you for dinner," he said. Her father turned to Eli. "Keep drawing," he said. "If you stop, I will be annoyed." "Yes, sir," Eli said. He walked away, scarf flicking in the breeze, swallowed by the city he had helped build. Back at her building, Charlotte led Jack and Eli up in a small elevator to her apartment. It was high enough that the city looked less sharp through the windows the lights scattered. Inside, the space was open and quiet. Art hung on the walls, but not the kind that appeared in press releases. Smaller pieces, some unsigned, some clearly made by hands that did not care about auctions. On a side table in the living area stood a frame with a familiar drawing. The first version of the three figures under the tree, the one with the faint erased outline. Eli stopped in front of it, eyes wide. "I thought I lost this," he said. "You left it on the kitchen table in Cedar Falls," she said, "before you moved. Mrs. Peterson found it and mailed it to me. She said it looked like something I needed to keep track of." "You never told me," he said. "I wanted to," she said. "It always felt like the wrong moment, or too late." He looked at the drawing again. The erased figure glowed faintly under the glass, the ghost of graphite still there. "It is weird seeing it here," he said, "in this place." "It belongs to all of us," she said. "I just keep it where I can see it when I forget what I am doing." She took them out on the small balcony. The city stretched in every direction. The air was cooler up there, the sound softer, a constant hum, instead of individual noises. Eli leaned on the railing, sketchbook already in hand. His pencil moved fast, catching the way light bounced off a nearby building, the way the river cut through the darkness below. Jack stood with his arms on the railing, hands relaxed. "You all right?" she asked. He nodded. "It is a lot," he said. "In a good way, just a lot." "Too much?" she asked. "Not yet," he said. She came to stand beside him. "You know you do not have to prove anything here," she said. "You do not have to know which fork to use or how to talk about art in long sentences." "I do not know which fork to use at home," he said. "That makes two of us," she replied. He smiled. They watched Eli draw the outline of the city, taking shape under his hand. The night pressed close but not heavy. "Does this feel like your world?" Jack asked her. "Indeed, her." "Some of it," she said. "The noise, the rooms with too many chairs, the feeling that everyone is watching and keeping score." "And the rest?" he asked. "The rest feels like visiting someone else's painting," she said. "Beautiful, but not mine." He considered that. "Riverbend feels like mine," he said. "And his. Cedar Falls did once. Maybe that is how it goes. Places work for a while, then you carry them with you." She glanced at him. "You know you are allowed to have more than one," she said. He nodded toward the apartment behind them and the city beyond. "You too," he said. Later, after Eli had fallen asleep on her couch, wrapped in a blanket that had once belonged to her mother, Jack and Charlotte sat at the small kitchen island. The lights were dim. The hum of the refrigerator was the loudest sound inside. On the counter between them, the old wooden pencil lay where Eli had set it. It caught a line of light from the under-cabinet fixture, its worn paint soft and familiar. "He trusts that thing," Jack said. "He trusts you more," she replied. He stared at the pencil for a moment. "I spent a long time trying to fix everything myself," he said. "Engines, bills, grief. I kept thinking if I just worked harder, I could make it all line up." "You kept a lot running that way," she said. "I almost broke something I could not fix," he said. "Pride is a stupid thing to sacrifice a kid for." "You did not," she said. "You bent. That is different." He looked at her. "I did not let you help for a long time," he said. "You let me help when it mattered," she said. He breathed out slowly. "You know this is not simple," he said. "Us, the distance, the weird timing, the fact that your life is in rooms like that one downstairs and mine is under hoods and on concrete." "I know," she said. "I do not have a word for what we are," he said. "Good," she said. "Every word I have heard so far sounds too small." He reached out and rested his hand on hers. This time he did not pull it back quickly. "We keep doing what we are doing," he said. "Showing up, calling, driving stupidly long distances to stand in rooms full of people who say negative space a lot. Funding community centers that struggle to pay the power bill," she said. "Buying burgers for men who used to be afraid of your bank account," he added. "Reminding each other when we start pretending again," she said. He nodded. "That I can do," he said. Their hands stayed together on the counter, the pencil beside them, the city outside the windows pulsing with light. In the morning they drove back to Riverbend. The truck's engine complained when they hit a patch of rough highway, then settled into its usual rhythm. Eli slept for the first hour, head against the window, sketchbook, loose on his lap. When he woke, he opened it and started a new drawing. He drew a road stretching ahead, lines converging. On one side, a cluster of tall shapes. On the other, smaller ones. In the middle, under a tree that had managed to grow in a patch of grass between lanes, 3 figures walked. They were not perfectly centered. The lines connecting them were faint and easy to miss if you did not know where to look. The truck rumbled on. The sky shifted from city gray to open blue. Sunlight came through the windshield and lay across the page, making the graphite shine for a moment before settling back into soft, steady lines. By the time the next big change in their lives came, no one could point to the exact day it started. It might have been the morning Eli woke before his alarm and sat at his desk with the window-cracked spring air moving the corner of the curtain. Light from the street lamp outside had not quite faded yet. He took the old wooden pencil out of its jar and for the first time in months actually drew with it. Lines came out smoother than he expected. Not as sharp as the newer graphite, but softer, with a weight that made the page feel more solid. He sketched the garage, first the front sign with its chipped paint, the Mercer Gallery plaque on the wall inside. Then he added the deli below the apartment, the smell of baking bread almost drifting off the paper. In the corner, he began a tree that did not exist in Riverbend, not yet branches reaching up past the roofline. The house buzzed awake around him. Pipes clicked. The coffee maker gurgled. Jack's footsteps crossed the hallway. "Morning," his dad said, leaning in the doorway. "Morning," Eli replied. "You are up early," Jack said. "I had stuff in my head," Eli said. "Needed to get it out." Jack nodded, eyes flicking to the pencil in his hand. "You using that one now?" he asked. Today, Eli said, feels like a today pencil. He tucked it behind his ear and closed the sketchbook. The scar on his chest caught the light when his shirt shifted a thin, pale line that had become part of the landscape of his body. School did what school always did. Days blurred into assignments, cafeteria noise, locker doors slamming. Eli was a freshman now. He had grown taller, his voice sometimes catching on low notes he was still getting used to. In the art room, he moved as if he had lived there for years. Mrs. Flores had shifted from teacher to something closer to co-conspirator. They argued about brushes. They debated which charcoal brand made better blacks. They planned projects that pushed the edges of what the school expected. "You need to start thinking about what comes after this," she said one afternoon, flipping through a stack of his work. "I have 3 years left," he said. 3 years sounds long now," she said. "It is not." "College," he asked. "Maybe," she said. "Or an institute. Or apprenticeships. There are 100 ways to do it. You should know your options before they start trying to choose for you." He thought of Chicago, then of the gallery, and the view from Charlotte's balcony. He thought of Riverbend, of the garage, and the community center. Both places felt real in his hand when he drew. When he got home that day, Jack was at the table with the mail spread out in piles. "Good news?" Eli asked. "Junk," Jack said. "Bills. Coupons. One mysterious envelope that is probably someone asking for my opinion on tires." He flicked that one away and held up a heavier piece of mail. "This is for you," he said. It was from the Community Arts Center. Inside was a letter printed on nice paper. "Dear Eli, we are starting a youth mentorship program this summer. Mrs. Flores recommended you as both participant and assistant. 2 afternoons a week, you would work with younger kids and also develop your own portfolio with visiting artists. A small stipend is included. We hope you will consider it." He read it twice. "They want to pay me to draw with kids," he said. "They want to pay you to teach," Jack said. "That is weird," Eli said. "Good weird," Jack replied. Eli folded the letter back into the envelope. "I want to do it," he said. "Then you do it," Jack said. That Sunday, Charlotte's face appeared on the laptop screen, framed by the warm light in her Chicago kitchen. She had a mug in her hand, hair pulled up, sleeves rolled. "Big news," Eli said before she could ask. "Oh, good," she said. "I am overdue." He held the letter up to the camera and read it out loud. Her smile grew as he went. "That is perfect," she said. "You know how many artists never get to learn how to explain what they do to anyone under 10. This will give you a superpower." "It is just a community center," he said. She shook her head. "It is a room with tables and paper where people will come who want to make things," she said. "That is not just anything." Jack listened from the side, pretending to be interested in the sports section. He caught out of the corner of his eye the way Charlotte's face softened when she looked at Eli, the way her eyes flicked over his features as if ticking through a list. Pale, but not too pale. Awake, breathing easy. "Can you come visit?" Eli asked when the conversation shifted. "Soon," she said. "I have a window in 3 weeks. We are opening a show here next weekend. After that, my time belongs to me for a little while." "You and your windows," Jack muttered. She heard him and smiled. "You like my visit?" she said. "Sometimes," he replied. "Such warmth," she said. "It is overwhelming." She did come 3 weeks later, showing up on a Friday afternoon with a weekend bag and a portfolio case that nearly tripped her on the stairs. "What is that?" Jack asked, taking it from her before she could fall. "Bribes," she said. "And maybe a surprise." Ease. She set the case on the table and left it closed, letting curiosity simmer. Saturday morning, they walked to the community center together. The building had once been a grocery store. The automatic doors no longer worked automatically, but the space inside hummed with purpose. Tables had been pushed into rows. Kids sat with markers and paint and paper. The smell of glue and tempera paint hung in the air with the sound of voices. Eli moved through the room with more ease than he would have expected a year ago. He leaned over one table to show a little girl how to make her clouds less like cotton balls and more like sky. At another, he knelt to help a boy with the proportions of a dog. "You do not have to draw every hair," he said. "You just have to draw the idea of hair." Charlotte watched from the back of the room, hands in her pockets. Mrs. Flores stood beside her. "He is good at this," Charlotte said. "He is better than I was at his age," Mrs. Flores said. "Some of that is talent. The rest is that he has had to learn to speak for himself." "When did you get so wise?" Charlotte asked. "The day they decided my program was worth funding," Mrs. Flores replied. "Apparently money comes with wisdom now." "That is not how it works," Charlotte said. "It is how people act," Mrs. Flores answered. They walked the perimeter of the room together, watching small hands work. On one wall, a series of blank canvases waited. "Those are for the mural project," Mrs. Flores said. We are going to let them build one big piece section by section. Who is designing it? Charlotte asked. How do you feel about your friend from Riverbend doing it? Mrs. Flores said. With supervision. Charlotte looked at Eli. He was laughing at something a kid said, his profile sharp in the light from the tall windows. I think he can handle it, she said. When the session ended, Eli wiped tables while kids were collected by parents and older siblings. The room emptied slowly. Mrs. Flores approached him. You have one more job, she said. I already stacked the chairs, he replied. This one involves less lifting, she said, more thinking. She tapped the blank canvases. Big wall, she said, yours to fill, within reason. He stared at the space at the way the light hit it. What do you want it to be, she asked. He thought of trees and roads and skylines. He thought of hospital rooms and riverbanks and the inside of garages. Something with room in it, he said. Good answer, she said. On the walk home, he walked between Jack and Charlotte, hands shoved into his hoodie pockets. Drawing on walls feels like getting away with something, he said. You are allowed this time, Charlotte said. Sanctioned rebellion? Jack glanced at him. Just do not come home and draw on mine, he said. No promises, Eli replied. Later that evening, Charlotte finally opened the portfolio case on the dining table. Inside were sheets of heavy paper matted and wrapped in clear sleeves. What is all this? Jack asked. Some of my mistakes, she said. She pulled out the top one and slid it toward Eli. It was a sketch rougher than anything he had seen from her before. A woman at a cafe table, her hands wrapped around a cup, eyes looking off to the side. I did these in college, she said, before I decided I was more useful telling other people what to hang on their walls. Eli's fingers traced the lines through the plastic. They are good, he said. They are fine, she said. I forgot I liked making them. Thought maybe we could trade. You show me what you are working on. I show you that I am not just a critic. You want to draw together? He asked. Yes, she said. Jack leaned against the counter, watching them spread paper and pencils out. You going to do join? She asked him. I draw straight lines, he said. That is what measuring tapes are for. Draw something crooked, then, she said. He hesitated, then pulled out a chair. He reached for a pencil, held it awkwardly at first, then more comfortably, as muscle memory from some long-ago drafting class kicked in. They drew for an hour under the kitchen light. Eli's hand moved fastest. Charlotte's lines were measured but sure. Jack's were careful, hesitant, as if he was afraid of breaking the paper. Eli finished first. He turned his sheet around. It was all three of them at that table seen from above. Hands cups the edge of the portfolio, their heads bent toward the center.
You spalled up the global soul.
I am good at drawing what I see, he said. She held up her own paper. She had drawn the view from the apartment window, the deli sign, the street, the hint of the garage roof down the block. It looked more lived in than the cityscapes she handled in her professional life. Jack finally slid his drawing forward. It was simpler. The old wooden pencil lay on its side. Behind it, out of focus, were three blurred shapes that could be people or shadows. It is about tools, he said. It is about us, Eli said. Summer thickened. The mural at the community center took shape. Eli sketched a tree that grew across two panels and into a third, its roots tangled around a road that twisted past buildings and fields. Kids filled in leaves and bricks and small details. A truck appeared near the roots, a hospital bed and a tiny window, a river, a small gallery sign. It was messy, but not chaotic. Each section held a piece of someone's story. When they were done, the panels hung together on the long wall, the seams nearly invisible. On the day they unveiled it, parents stood in front of the mural and pointed out little bits they recognized. That is your school, one said. That is our street. You put my car there, a mechanic laughed. Charlotte stood at one end, arms folded, lightly, eyes taking it all in. Worth it? Mrs. Flores asked her. Yes, Charlotte said. Think your board will ask for a plaque? Mrs. Flores asked. They will get a photo, Charlotte replied. That is enough. Fall arrived. Another round of leaves, another stack of bills, another doctor visit where the news stayed steady and good. On a damp October evening, Jack closed the garage late. The streetlights had already come on, casting yellow pools on the wet pavement. The Mercer Gallery corner glowed in the background, Eli's drawings layered 3 deep, now some in frames, some taped in uneven grids. He locked the front and turned to find Eli sitting on the hood of a sedan, waiting for pickup sketchbook, balanced on his knees. You are supposed to be home, Jack said. I left a note, Eli replied. With who? Jack asked. With the fridge, Eli said. It understands me. Jack shook his head but did not push. "What are you drawing?" he asked. Eli flipped the sketchbook around. It was the garage from the street, the bay door's closed light spilling from the side window. "You like this place that much?" Jack asked. "It is where the stories start," Eli said, "and where a lot of them end up again." Jack thought about that. "You think you will stay here?" he asked. "For a while," Eli said. "Then maybe other places. I want to go back to Cedar Falls someday. And to Chicago. And to somewhere I have not heard about yet." "You going to come back when you leave?" Jack asked. Eli looked at him. "Do you want me to?" he asked. "Yes," Jack said. "Then I will," Eli replied. Later that night, when the dishes were done and the lights mostly out, the phone rang. Not the laptop this time. The old landline they still kept, because the building had come with it and no one had bothered to cancel. Jack answered. "Mercer House," he said. "It is loud in my head," Charlotte's voice said on the other end. "I needed to hear something that is not a board member." "Did you hang up on them again?" he asked. "I left a room," she said. "They will survive." He moved to the window. The street below was quiet. The deli sign swung slightly in the evening breeze. "What is going on?" he asked. "Nothing new," she said. "Just another round of people asking if we have to give money to places with leaky roofs." "Tell them leaky roofs have better acoustics," he said. "That is actually not a bad line," she replied. She shifted, and he could hear the faint sound of city traffic on her end. "How is he?" she asked. "Good," Jack said. "He drew a whole wall today." "Of course he did," she said. They talked about small things. A car Jack had worked on, an exhibit she was planning, a new coffee place in Riverbend, a bakery near her building. The conversation drifted into an easy quiet. "You know what I figured out?" she asked at last. What he said. "There is no version of my life where you two are not in it now," she said. "Even if we only talk every once in a while, even if you never set foot in another gallery, you are in the picture, literally in some cases." He leaned his forehead against the cool glass. "I figured that out too," he said. "You okay with that?" she asked. "Yes," he said. He heard her exhale long and slow. "Then I will call you later," she said. "You always do," he replied. After he hung up, he walked to Eli's room. The door was half open. Inside, the boy slept sprawled sideways, one arm flung over his head. The jar on the desk caught a line of light from the hallway. The wooden pencil shone faintly among the others. On the wall above the desk hung a new drawing. It showed a car on a highway, a city in the distance, a small town in the rearview mirror, and a tree that appeared in both places, its branches stretching across the whole page. In the dark, the pencil lines were hard to see. Jack knew them well enough to fill in the gaps. He turned off the hall light and let the house settle. The radiator clicked on. The building sighed. Somewhere outside, the river kept moving past the edge of town, carrying bits of light on its surface. In the morning, the garage would open again. Engines would cough and catch. Graphite would meet paper. Phones would ring from Chicago, and quiet would fall from the high windows of the community center. The pencil would wait in its jar until the next time someone reached for it, ready to mark the page where their lives crossed again. The sapling they had planted behind the garage the first spring in Riverbend was no longer a sapling. By late afternoon, its branches reached higher than the roofline leaves, thick enough to make their own shade. When the wind moved through them, it sounded like soft applause. Jack stood at the back door of the shop with a socket wrench in his hand, listening. The sound of the tree mixed with the familiar noises of the day. A car door shutting across the street. A distant siren. The tick of a cooling engine in Bay 2. Dad, Eli called from inside. "You done talking to the plants?" "They started it," Jack said. He wiped his hands and stepped into the apartment stairwell. The smell of the deli downstairs had faded for the day, replaced by the quieter sense of their kitchen above. Coffee from the morning, soap from dishes, graphite and paper. Eli's duffel sat by the couch zipper, straining. A backpack leaned against it, pockets stuffed with sketchbooks. On the small table by the window lay a folded packet with a logo at the top. Chicago Institute of Visual Arts. Summer residency 2 months. First real step. Eli stood at the counter sorting pencils. The jar that had once held only a handful now held a small forest of them, all lengths and brands and purposes. The old wooden one sat in his palm, light and worn. "You taking that?" Jack asked. "I do not know," Eli said. He rolled it between his fingers, then set it down. "It is like bringing the whole garage with me," he said. "Might be a lot for one dorm room." "You could leave it here," Jack said. "Let the place keep an eye on it." Eli looked at the pencil, then at his father. "I will draw new things there," he said. "The old stuff can stay where it knows the light." He left the wooden pencil in the jar. He chose 3 others and slid them into a roll of fabric that tied neatly shut. Jack watched his movements. Taller now, leaner. The scar on his chest a pale curve when he pulled a clean shirt over his head. The boy who had once struggled to walk a hallway without feeling his heart catch now moved easily, accustomed to the strength of his own body. "You packed your meds?" Jack asked.
Idao. Piste.
"Yes," Eli said. "Schedule printed." "Yes." "Doctor's note in your bag, in case any nurse there decides to be creative." "Yes, Dad." "You know you do not have to go," Jack said. Eli looked up, then eyes sharp. "I know," he said. "I want to go." Jack nodded, hands finding the back of a chair. "Good," he said. "Just making sure you are doing it for you, not for some imaginary committee in Chicago." "If I was doing it for them, I would have picked a different portfolio," Eli said. "Less trees, more squares." "Squares need love too," Jack said. "Let someone else draw those." Eli replied, A car horn sounded from the street below. Short, impatient, but not unfriendly. "That is her," Jack said. Eli grabbed his backpack. Jack hefted the duffel. They took the stairs down together. The air in the deli was cooler now that the ovens were off. Marco waved from behind the counter, a dish towel over his shoulder. "Bring me a painting," he called. "Something small. I will pay in sandwiches." "Deal," Eli said. Outside, Charlotte leaned against the hood of a dark sedan, keys twirling in her fingers. Her hair was pulled back in a rough knot, sunglasses perched on her head instead of her face. "You know I am perfectly capable of finding parking," she said. "You did not have to save me a spot with your truck for 3 days." "You like predictability," Jack said. "Consider it a gift." She straightened as they approached, eyes taking in the bags the set of Eli's shoulders. "You ready to come make my city look better?" she asked him. "I am ready to make it look honest," he said. "I will take that," she replied. They piled into the car. Eli took the backseat sketchbook already out. Jack sat in the passenger seat, knees a little higher than he liked. Charlotte adjusted the mirror and pulled away from the curb. Riverbend slid past the windows, the deli, the garage, the corner where the community center sign hung, the park where the mural lived on the wall, colors still bright under a year of weather and fingers. At the edge of town, as they crossed the bridge, Eli turned in his seat to look back. The river caught late light, bright in patches, dark in others. "Feels weird to leave it," he said. "It will still be there when you come back," Charlotte said. "Possibly with more questionable graffiti." "Maybe I will do better graffiti," he said. "That is what worries me," Jack said. The highway opened up ahead, lanes stretching toward a flat horizon. They had made this drive enough times that it had its own rhythm, the same rest stops, the same billboard shaped like a giant ear of corn, the same turn where the skyline first appeared, distant and humming. "You remember the first time?" Charlotte asked quietly, eyes on the road. "I remember the parking garage that tried to eat my truck," Jack said. "I remember the gallery," Eli said, "and your father trying not to look scary." "He failed," she said. "Not completely," Eli replied. "Storm in this outside pulled." The city gathered itself in front of them, glass and steel catching the sun. Eli drew as they drove, lines quick and short, capturing angles as they shifted. At the institute, students and parents moved in small clusters between buildings. Suitcases rolled. A staff member in a bright t-shirt pointed people towards check-in tables set up under white tents. Charlotte found a spot near the gate, something that would have taken Jack an hour of circling on his own. They unloaded. Heat rose from the pavement. Inside the main hall, banners hung from the ceiling. Students' work lined the walls. Sculptures perched on pedestals. The air smelled like paper coffee and a hint of nervousness. They checked Eli in. A student volunteer gave him a key card and a lanyard, his name printed in bold black letters underneath the institute's logo. "Dorms are that way," the volunteer said. "Studios in the opposite direction, dinner at 6, mandatory orientation at 7. Parents get kicked out at 5. "Clear instructions," Jack murmured. They hauled the duffel and backpack up 3 flights of stairs. The dorm room was small. 2 beds, 2 desks, 2 wardrobes. One bed already had a stack of composition notebooks on it. The other was bare, waiting. "This is you," Charlotte said. Eli set his stuff down. He stood in the middle of the room, looking at the blank walls, the view of a brick courtyard, the faint graffiti on the underside of the bunk above his bed. "Feels like a sketchbook," he said. "You do not have to fill it all in one day," Jack said. They made the bed. They unfolded clothes. The process went faster than anyone wanted it to. There was not enough to do to stretch the time. At the end, Eli pulled one drawing from his portfolio. It was the tree again, but different. This version showed the Riverbend sapling leaves, still thin trunk, not yet thick, with the outline of the garage in the background. In the distance, almost invisible, a city skyline rose, more suggestion than detail. He taped it to the wall above his desk. So it knows where I came from, he said. He set his pencil roll on the desk, the newer ones sharp and ready. The wooden pencil remained in the jar back home. You good, Jack asked. I am good, Eli said. Are you? No, Jack said. But that is not your job. Charlotte leaned in the doorway watching them. The announcement came over the intercom then. Parents and visitors were encouraged to make their way to the lobby. The program was about to begin. Time to let go. They stepped into the hall. Voices echoed. Doors banged. A humming mix of excitement and nerves moved through the space like electricity. At the stairwell they paused. Call me, Jack said. Even if it is just to say the food is terrible. I will send evidence, Eli said. Video calls on Sundays for me, Charlotte said. Text anytime you want, or anytime you are avoiding homework. You are giving him an excuse, Jack said. He already has 1,000, she replied. Eli looked at both of them. For a moment he seemed younger. Then he straightened. I will be back, he said. I like our tree too much to stay away. Jack put a hand on the back of his neck and pulled him forward, pressing his forehead briefly against his son's. Go make some noise, he said. Charlotte pulled him into a hug quick and fierce. Draw what you see, she said near his ear, and draw what you wish you could see. He nodded. Then he turned and headed down the stairs, blending into the river of students flowing toward the lobby. Jack and Charlotte stood for a moment at the top, listening to the ebb and flow of footsteps and voices. Then they walked down too, out into the bright afternoon and the city that waited. The drive back felt shorter, maybe because they did not talk as much. Silence rode with them, but it was not empty. It was full of images. Eli in that room. Eli in those studios. Eli on some future street that had not yet made it onto any of their maps. They reached Riverbend in the blue edge of evening. The deli sign glowed. The garage sat quiet door pulled down metal, catching the last light. Jack unlocked it anyway, habit stronger than tiredness. The smell of oil and rubber greeted him like always. The Mercer Gallery wall watched from the side drawings, layered over drawings, some edges curling. Charlotte walked straight through to the back door. Come on, she said. They stepped outside. The tree behind the garage rustled taller than the last time she had seen it. The trunk had thickened. The carved initials near the base, transferred from a small stone plaque they had installed a year earlier, caught the light. S and J, the past. J and E, the present. The pencil in the jar, the third constant. They stood under the leaves. The sky above was streaked with pink and gold. Light filtered through the branches, dappled on their faces on the cracked concrete on the side of the garage. You all right? She asked. He nodded. My engine sounds different, he said. That is all. Running smoother, she replied. Running without him in the passenger seat, he said. She reached for his hand. He let her take it. He is not gone, she said. He is just drawing from a different angle for a while. They stood there, like that quiet hand in hand, under the tree that had grown while they were busy fixing other things. Inside, on the small desk in Eli's room, the jar of pencils waited. The wooden one sat at the front, its point dull but still capable of leaving a line. Evening light slid in through the window, catching on its worn paint. In the garage, a car that needed attention sat with its hood up. Jack would get to it in the morning. There was time. For now, the sound that filled the air was not an engine or a monitor, but the wind in the leaves and the faint hum of the town settling for the night. Light shifted slowly as the sun slid lower, spilling through the branches onto the back wall of the garage. For a moment, the pattern it made looked like lines on a page waiting. There were still stories ahead in cities and small rooms and studios with tall windows, but they would find their way there one line at a time, one choice at a time, one arrival and return at a time. Under the tree in Riverbend, two people stayed where they were grounded and steady, leaving space for a third who would always know the way back. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.